You want comic talk, you know who to call. Weird Science. Jim is short and he also can't see at all. Weird Science. When there's comics to review, you can count on the Get Fresh crew. Beep boop. It's the Weird Science DC Comic Show. Let's go! It's the Weird Science DC Comic Show. Let's go! Let's go!
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Weird Science DC Comics Show. This is episode 578, and if you're wondering why you didn't hear Eric kick in or even in the song, it's because, unfortunately, Eric has decided to quit the show. He is done, and he did this before. That was always kind of pushed as a bit of a hiatus. I know that Luke Hollywood out there knows all about those, but this is permanent. I really do think some people have asked me and said, oh, he'll come back, whatever. I don't think so. I think he's done. He ended up messaging me and telling me that he's been thinking about it for a long time and decided that he was done. Now, when I got that message, and getting it in a message kind of did tick me off a bit, but the idea of him thinking about it for a long time also had me kind of get through a bit of, different emotions of I am sad that he's gone. I will miss him. I have a feeling that he probably won't talk to me anymore. So that's, sucks. But also just the idea that he was thinking about it for that long a time, it does kind of get me a little bit angry. And so I have gone through a roller coaster ride of emotions, as they say in the comic reviewing biz. And at this point, though, I have to get over it. And I have decided that, in fact, instead of saying, okay, just replace Eric, we're going to do some changes. Now, again, if you have been around, it was about a year and a half when he did this before. And I ended up getting a bunch of people. We had a big crew, the Get Fresh crew, and everybody kind of pitched in and went with that. And people seemed to like it at a point when I got used to it. Now, if you remember the time when he left before, the first show that we had, first big show, I did get drunk. So I'm not drunk right now. So I think that I've grown a bit, but I also have, relied on the Get Fresh crew and everybody listening is part of that. But the idea where I said this on our Patreon, when people say and reach out to me, and it really is great when people say, oh, you got me through this and thank God you guys do this and whatever. It makes me feel good that we've been there for everybody. But I do want to make sure that everybody realizes, even if you're not part of the Patreon, whatever the deal may be, but everybody out there, you've always been there for us as well, obviously listening, but also stepping in and doing some stuff with us. Now, in that, a lot of people, when they do end up going and say, hey, I want to support you guys, I want to get these shows that you talk about and go to the Patreon, they are a lot of times shocked at first to realize, boy, how many shows do you have? But also how many people record? Because Eric really only did the stuff mainly that you hear right here on the feed. We did that Absolute show, but also did the Patreon Spotlight. That's the one show that he did on the Patreon. But there's about 20, 30 shows each month on the Patreon. There's a lot of people, and they've been so good and so nice, and I have so much fun talking to them that it does lessen the blow. I will miss Eric, but having other people join me on the show, I hope that everybody likes that, but also gives you a little bit of a heads up of what does go on the Patreon and how many different shows and how many different people end up joining me. And I'm kind of excited about that, but also I'm going to probably change up the format a little. We'll still be reviewing the comics. Maybe we'll cut some that are just bullcrap, right? Maybe we'll add some that we haven't been talking about that I may have wanted to talk about all along. We'll have to see as that goes on. But I also want to add possibly a mail section again. That's something we haven't pushed as much, but also a news section. I know there's not always news each and every week, but maybe when there's not news, we could have a little bit of like an editorial type thing. And how I actually envision the show going forward would almost be like a variety show or even like a Saturday Night Live type thing. Each week, you'll get some other people, some other guest hosts, some other things going down, maybe even have a couple skits. I don't know. I am kind of excited to kind of change things up, but still keep the core of the show, which is reviewing the books, reviewing them in an honest way and all that jazz. But again, I just want to, spell it out there that I do wish that Eric had stayed. I will miss him, but he wanted to quit. I don't want to quit. I don't want to stop things. So we'll just have to keep going. And it'll probably be a bit of an evolution. This week is going to be a little rough. We're only going to be talking about 4 books, so plethora minus 2. They are the bigger books, but unfortunately, say a Flash, that Cy Spurrier Flash and Green Arrow, that kind of got pushed aside only because of time and hosts and things like that. But this coming week, I will make my due deal and I'll figure out what's going on. And really, the only thing that really does affect me with this, besides missing Eric, is the idea of having to schedule possibly 6 people or so per show. And that could be a little bit of a hassle, but I don't mind it because, again, I like talking to everybody. And if you have been with us for a while, I think you would have seen that progression of me and Eric kind of get together. We do the podcast. And as it's gone on, I've branched out a bit and talked to a lot of other people, not even just on our Patreon, but people on YouTube. I've been wanting to push more YouTube stuff. Eric was not that interested in that as well. So expect more of that. I just think that it's going to expand some things a little more and have a little more voices in the podcast and going through all that. But we'll get right to the real meat and cheese of the show to let everybody know that if you want to support us, you can go to our Patreon at patreon.com/Weird Science. And one of the big shows that we do each and every week, and it's not going to change, is our Thursday night Patreon Spotlight. 2 books picked by the badasses of the Get Fresh crew. And this week, we ended up doing 2 classics, Power Girl number 18 and Metamorpho number 3. Not the greatest of books, but if you do end up going over and signing up on the Patreon, you can hear a drunken Simon talk about curry with me and how he gave me a curry recipe that gave me diarrhea. Fun stuff like that, right? But we also went into, pretty much depth of those 2 books, talked about the idea that they aren't great, but tried to discuss how they could be and what we did like about them. And lo and behold, Simon didn't mind Power Girl that much, which actually shocked me. So there you go. You have a new voice, a new kind of thing. And if you aren't aware, on the Patreon, me and Simon do the Hellboy Reading Club podcast every other Monday. I believe as I'm recording this, it'll be coming up this coming Monday. So again, somebody in the Get Fresh crew, somebody who does things with me already. So that's kind of cool. Now, while I did that, I ended up hitting a thing and went off the page that I wanted to be on, because when we get to this point, I usually then say, as Eric would mutter and make fun of me, the idea that we want to give a shout out to all the badasses of the Get Fresh crew. Beep boop, and that is the Badass Spotlight. And here we go. And I could just rap now and nobody would be here to stop me. Nobody at all. But I'm going to go forward with the Sean M., Andrew in Belfast, don't mention it, D-Man 3001, David Fink, Jack Halsey, Brandon, who, thank you for going up to the badass level. That is awesome. Nick Rust, Trevitt, Tom Johnson, Dan Smith, JLG, The Big Z, The Mark Claire Show, The Annihilator, Ted Probst, I Love Punchline, Stork, who you'll probably be hearing more from, Michael S., Matt Razor, Dr. Matt, Niels T. Lort, Stephen Baum, Jason Colby, Sue42 to you and me, Mike G., Ken Halleck, Comic Boom Rocket, Mark Jager, Carlos, Tulwolf Marv, Luke Hollywood, hiatus, Simon, I haven't heard from Luke again in a couple weeks. I'm worried about him again. Luis, Manship, we have Swanee, Josh Vermillion, Batman Beyond, Mark, B. Muir, Brandy Murray up there in Canada, that is Buffalo, Canada, and Double A Ron doxing his ass in Minnesota. Shout out to the all-times greats. All-times greats? Oh no, and now we're doing this repeat thing. I did not hit that. I didn't. These things. Yes, and the all-time greats, Reginald Drinkwater and Rob Lewis. Beep, boop. But again, this is going to be kind of a cobbled together show. I apologize for that. It will get better, and hopefully it'll get even better. As I said, we're not going to be able to replace Eric, but I think that we can do things in a different way that might be exciting. Me and Eric had pretty much the same format for many a year, so it might be a bit exciting to change things up, get a little different focus going on, and getting a lot more voices. So I hope that everybody sticks around. I hope that you are here for what would be maybe a new journey in this roller coaster ride we like to call life as we go forward. But we're going to go off, and as I said, we're going to have people. Why not have Sus Gabe? Why not get the sussest of sus? Sus Gabe, who is going to be joining me right here, where we'll talk about Detective Comics and Superman right about now.
Your soapbox. The story can't have a real resolution when you only signal the problem but never have a solution. Your soapbox. Just write a story and get off your soapbox.
And I'm here with my man Gabe. What up, Gabe?
What up, Jim? Thank you for having me.
No problem.
I'm very grateful you did not introduce me as Sus Gabe.
I was going to. I actually stopped at the last second because I thought, you know what, that's not nice. That's not nice to say Sus Gabe, though.
It's getting out of control. I'm finding it
is.
everywhere. Everywhere I turn, I'm finding it.
You do remember that I gave you that nickname, correct?
Yes.
I always end up where I do these things and then it gets lost in the shuffle and then everybody has ideas of stuff. So when you get angry at me that I ended up calling you. But again,
that Predator score is haunting me for the rest of the time.
I've even gone beyond that and just call you straight up Sus Gabe. But in that, you have to realize that the term sus, when I first heard that years ago from my kids, I was enamored by that. And people even told me I had to stop using it so much. But when I called you Sus Gabe and Dirty Song Empire that I try to have, Sus Records. So it is a bit of endearment that I have for you, though a lot of people that end up using it, I laugh because I don't know that they're using it as a term of endearment or whatnot, but
stop sugarcoating it. Just we all know what you think. We all know what you really
you're
think.
Sus is what you are. Though as we go forward, obviously in a new phase of the podcast, I will be having you on as many times as you want to be on. But I do have some plans for Sus Gabe, and I have plans for Gabe and Sus Gabe. So with
Sus
that,
Gabe, Sus Views.
With that though, Gabe has to realize that when people end up, and there are people who end up attacking you on Twitter and then attack you on the comments of the Comic Book Roundup, I'm usually right there to defend you. I'm there. I will call you Sus Gabe, but I do not like anybody else giving you crap at all. But I flip out.
You know, the funny thing is, I usually don't even look. I don't even pay attention to like who responds or comments. I just ignore them. And you get madder about responses to me than I do because I'm not even paying attention to that stuff.
So I get really mad. I did defend you on the site and it was the Marvel site, I believe. Yep. Really ridiculous idea of the idea of having fun with Doom. But I also defended you a lot the one time on the Comic Book Roundup. Again, I
Yep.
will also defend just about anybody who gives fair reviews. And that's where I really get upset because a lot of times nowadays, that's not the landscape. People are just giving, well, they're giving the sus reviews. It's funny to say yours are, but the
Mhm.
idea of giving 10s out like it's candy on Halloween is ridiculous. And then when somebody actually does give an honest review, people flip out. And it
No,
shouldn't be that
you gotta
way.
earn my 10. My 10s are hard to come by. You gotta
Exactly, and that sounds sus right there, Gabe. But me and you are gonna talk about the two big books, pretty much two of the
Yep.
bigger books this week. It's Detective and Superman, and Batman, Superman is kind of the tale of two books here. But one of the things going in, just to let everybody know, have you enjoyed? Besides this issue, have you enjoyed Detective Comics so far? Which we're gonna start with.
Well, here's what I will say. It's better than Rom V's run. So it's an improvement in that direction. This issue, unfortunately, gets into the Tom Taylorisms that we'll talk about in a second. But I think, all things considered, it's at least you could understand the narration, and you didn't need a dictionary to figure out what they were trying to say.
That's
So
true.
all things considered, it's an original villain. It's an original tale. I don't know why he made such a big deal about the whole Joe Chill connection, because it doesn't look like it's gone anywhere so far, unless he's holding it back like he did with Heartless. But all things considered, it's okay, and it's better than the previous run. So that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I've actually been liking it enough. Yeah. It started to, in the last couple issues, it started to veer, and as you said, the Tom Taylor deal, and where I say, and there's a lot of people who will have different opinions on Tom Taylor and how he goes with his social stuff and his political stuff. My biggest problem is it's usually surface level. It's usually just the problem. There's never a solution really presented. And in this, if Bruce Wayne throws money at it, that's not a solution, because in the Nightwing run, I think that with the prison stuff, he's really into the prisons. That was pay for prison type deal. That really isn't huge in the U.S., more in, I guess, in Australia, when I did look up some things. But the idea at the end, we didn't know what happened with it. You ended up tearing down a prison that they then make into Titan's Tower. But yet there were prisoners running around the streets, and we don't know what happened to them.
In retrospect, Dick made Bloodhaven more dangerous than it was before.
Yeah, and now some people would say, "Oh, well, for a fact they had to." That's fine, but say it in the book, right? That's what I'm saying. You have to show it. And so again, what I think that my biggest problem is with Tom Taylor, as I give you the credits here, is the idea that it is the problem. There's less the solution, and it becomes more signaling than actually presenting anything within the comic that could make it better. But it is Detective Comics number 1094. It's written by Tom Taylor, Michael Giannini on art, colors, and cover, Wes Abbott on letters, and you have the editor being there, Ben Mears, also Rob Lebanon, group editor. I said I would start doing the editors in the credits, and yet I barely can even figure it out myself. But we end up going, and here's the thing. This is where I said about this recently we had Batman show up, and a kid had stolen the car from his, I guess, stepdad. The stepdad then, hey, he beats my mom. All these things going. And usually at this, it happened. We even talked before this in the Green Arrow book that came out again this week as well. The idea that it's not the who's worse. That's not how justice works. It's not, well, I killed somebody, but they're worse, so I'm innocent. No, you're both guilty then. The idea that the system is corrupt is one bad thing, but you can't then say, well, these kids can commit crimes and I'll feel bad. You could try to help them, which is fine. And really, the thing that gets me about Tom Taylor, and I'll ask you, do you approve of kids being beaten and abused in prison? Gabe, I'm asking you. I mean, this is a hot take, right?
I don't think anybody's going to argue against that. And I think part of the issue there also is, to your point about, if you beat them up, then that means that I should beat them up because like for like, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. That's exactly the opposite of what you want out of a hero, because that hero should have some kind of moral compass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what makes him a hero is that when he's put under pressure and he's pinched and pushed and pulled, the compass still points north.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you start messing with that, they're saying, well, the compass will swift and turn and twist anyway, depending on the situation. it's not so much a hero anymore, and that's a bad situation to be in for this type of comic.
And my moral compass goes way down south, is what I
Oh,
say, Gabe, way down
oh,
south. So
man,
when this is going on again
on.
with Batman,
Wah, wah.
when Batman's going with this whole deal, like, I don't expect him to scream and yell at this kid who's dying. I expect him to save him. But what Tom Taylor does beyond that is you can tell he tries to convince us that this kid isn't so bad. But he's a kid. He may have run into problems. That's fine. But when he goes a little bit too much. And when he goes through this explanation, even he wants to give you the idea that this kid barely did anything wrong. And then maybe, jail wasn't the thing for him, whatnot. That's a whole different bag of worms there. It's not really what's going to save the kid. And then if you really think that the prisons are corrupt, you're going to have to do something about that. But as Batman, you have to stop this serial killer that's going around and getting these kids. That's first and foremost.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, Tom Taylor muddies things up. And I think that one of the things, and why I asked you, are you against it? I think that everybody would agree that what is happening in Gotham in this is wrong. This should not happen. But yet Tom Taylor presents it as in a way that he is lecturing us to convince us that it's wrong. But I don't think that we think it's right. And so when it gets it's too much.
Nobody thinks that's right. And even when you have and part of the way that he kind of presents it is he doesn't say here's a situation, the hero's interacting with it, and he has to make up his mind. What is right for him? How does he want to address this situation? How does he want to tackle it? What he does is he takes the situation and he makes it so extreme.
Yes, it's always extreme.
In your face that it's like impossible to kind of like even work around it to give Batman opportunities. Like if you don't react to this, then you're a terrible person because you made it so over the top, ridiculous, and extreme. It doesn't even make sense.
And even have Yannen's art making it so over the top. Like these guards aren't just they are behemoth guys. Like everything with that. So one of the things that got me at the beginning, because he is talking about this kid, and this is the thing. If the narration was changed and it's like, man, this guy's a piece of crap. He killed 7. Batman would still save him. Batman's a hero. He would still save him. Going through it, though, almost makes it feel like Batman is running it through his mind saying, well, this kid's good enough. That's not true. It's more of exposition for us to feel bad about the kid, which you don't have to. You don't want a kid to be sliced up and die. But in the meantime, if this was the worst of the worst ever, he would still save him. He's Batman. That's what he does. And when he actually, this is the thing that gets me upset about this issue. The actual machinations of Batman save him and the utility, pretty cool. I mean, he gets him in the Batmobile and he makes sure, even the idea of getting the suspension and making it so that if they have, hit a pothole, it's not going to hurt the kid.
Yeah, so it stabilizes. Really it's like a mini med bay. That whole piece was cool.
That is really cool. I thought that was really good. But in the meantime, just the over-the-top deal. And then the kid has to be, oh, my God, I was a kid and I had my Justice League poster. I wish they said, but then Night Terrors came and I threw it away. But he's like, yeah, me and my friends are being cool, but I always like you because you're one of us. It's okay.
You ever notice that they don't talk about that anymore? How Night Terrors was supposed to make everybody afraid of the
they
heroes?
were going to be afraid. And when he says, I was afraid, that's what I thought, oh, we're going to get it. And remember, you had that one kid tear the poster down during
completely ignored. Nobody even talks about it anymore. Same writer. That's Tom Taylor. Williamson's the next one we're going to talk about. But yeah. But nobody talks about it anymore. It's a non-issue.
It'd be funny. I wish that during Night Terrors, Batman's like, we don't talk about that, buddy. But Summerween was such a fun time. So they end up taking this kid to the hospital. Now, we've seen from Kai, one other kid, that they're not safe in the hospital. Damian reminds Batman of that, and he says, I got a good guy on it. And Bullock is a good guy to go on there.
Yeah.
Bullock will start to, I think, be mind controlled later as we go. It's almost like a body snatcher thing, I thought. But you end up where Batman says, we have to investigate. Now, this is the thing. You're trying to figure out who this Asma is, or however you would pronounce it, Asma.
Asima. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a very odd name. So with that, though, you want to make the connection and try to see what the connection with Scarlet is. So it makes sense enough. Hey, Damian, we're going to go in, but it's not. Because all that is just to show you the abuse. We're now centered on the abuse in the prison system, not the serial killer that's going around killing the kids. And that's the problem, I think, with this issue. It doesn't get out of its own way to actually fit in and tell a comic book story. We're on Soapbox Central here as we go forward. Now, with that,
especially, I'll add one more thing to that. I mean, the reason he's sending Damien in the first place is saying you got to go undercover, find out what's the connection between the teens that have been released and why they're being hunted. At no point did he go back to those teens and start, asking them questions to find a common thread.
yeah, he has the things, right?
He's got the kid. He just rounded them up, gave them clothes with cameras built in, and then set them loose. He didn't ask them any questions.
You're right. I forgot about that. You even actually have the pool of kids to go and first off say, okay, everybody, write down the people who you were friends with in prison. Tell me what happened. Go this and that.
What did they
all of a
do
sudden,
to you? How did they experiment on you?
There's a common thread. Oh, it was this kid and that guy and whatnot. Or quite simply, they ended up throwing blood from us when we got in trouble. And that's the key thing. So you're right. I didn't even remember the idea that they had that. You already have more of the evidence outside within your grasp than you would have Damien going into the prison. It doesn't make sense.
It's Damien. He was never going to be in any danger. So I don't think there's a problem there as far as, what if he gets hurt? I mean, this is Damien we're talking about.
No, I don't mind about Damien.
But at the same time, it's all this machinations and subterfuge and the prosthetics and everything else to sneak him in to find out the data that you have like 6 or 7 teenagers that are standing right there that have the same information.
And really get lucky with Damien with the data because he says, Damien, this is direct. Damien, the guards will expect their direction to be followed. You can't learn anything from solitary confinement. Do you understand? I understand the mission, Father. And he says, I'll put away my contempt for thought. The problem is within 3 minutes, it seems he ends up doing exactly what Batman tells him not to. They are there to get info. They're there as a reconnaissance thing. And some of the strongest things going on would be Damien there and not being able to react, knowing that he's on this mission and want to jump in, but won't be able to, and could do quite like Batman does when because Bruce is going to go in as well. And he's going to do this weird little try to make the warden kind of trip and go. I think Damien could have done something like that as well to maybe stop this attack that happens. But instead, he goes away. Like the idea that Bruce might think, don't get in any fights. You'll be in solitary. He goes off to a point where it's completely over the top that he's taking over part of the prison.
Yeah, he staged a revolt where he was. Well, but I just from the way Batman reacted when he heard what was going on, I think he knew in advance that what was going to happen.
If he told
him to obey, but I think he was really secretly knowing. He's not going to obey. So
if he thought that was the case, because he wants to find, he says, go and find friends, connections. Really, what they do end up and why Tom Taylor just lets it go this way is because the drawing of the blood is it. That is the clue. Right. But I don't think he had the idea of that before. And then it even goes with the idea of, okay, so they're using young kids' blood that doesn't even make sense to me. But we'll discuss that. That'll be down the road.
Yeah.
And a bit of things. But in the meantime, Damien gets rounded up. I do think that Batman, you might be right, because he dresses him up like such a douchebag that I think that immediately he's going to get in some sort of fight. I mean, look at these kids, and then David's there. Hey, guys.
Yeah.
And so the warden comes in and he does this deal. He's yelling at them. And again, I don't know if Tom Taylor wants to push the idea that a warden yelling at the kids is bad. This probably happens all the time and whatnot. But the guy, you can tell he's over the top. So you end up where Bruce goes in as well. Mm-hmm. And he's going to say, I want to invest in the prison deal. Now, This is Bruce Wayne. He's a billionaire. I don't know that this warden knows anything more than Bruce Wayne, Wayne Industries, Playboy, whatnot. But because Tom Taylor goes so over the top when he gets in this mode, and I'll tell you, sometimes he doesn't do this, but when he gets in the mode, he goes too much. This guy is way much information to somebody who is just there to say, I might want to invest. He's winking. Yeah, we have other ways to make money. Wink, wink. Hey, we'll do this. Hey, we do that. And gets really over the top, even when Bruce is questioning him in a way that seems very aggressive of not condoning what he's doing. And the guy just keeps going and says, I hope it brings to you peace of mind to know that these people get punished. Like he's really over the top because it's like a mustache twirling villain
it's very one-dimensional. But I have a question for you. This is Bruce Wayne, but let's focus on Batman for a second. Let me ask you, Jim, has Batman ever broken into Arkham Asylum?
Yes.
Has Batman ever broken into Blackgate Prison?
Yes, he has. Yes.
So you're telling me that he couldn't break into a low security juvenile detention center to raid the warden's office?
And this
he had to go through this whole subterfuge to get in there when Batman could have done it in the blink of an eye. And he even breaks in later. He even breaks in later without any trouble. So why did he go through all this?
We'll get to that in a minute because in this, like, again, he's there to put his little zip drive so Oracle can go through. We see this a lot, and we've seen it even more recently. But the idea of this when he goes in,
how did he get the Wi-Fi password?
Yeah, and I mean, here's the other thing with it though. With that, why even send Damien? I mean, you're gonna get the. It's just all the things that go on in this are just so over the top and in your face in my mind. And then he ends up in really, if you have Bruce Wayne go in and then the guards, they leave the room. And then all of a sudden Bruce comes out and like, hey, guard, he tripped the foul. Like, they might want to know what happened. He just says he tripped. He hit his head. I'm like, I don't know about that. Like maybe they question him or whatnot. And then Bruce has his foot in the door and that's where he goes back. And it just becomes kind of, I don't know. It's comic books again. It's clumsy, but that's the problem. You have Tom Taylor who, instead of writing a natural way of doing it, he has a couple things that he wants to have happen, and he's going to force the issue in, whether it makes sense, whether it's Batman, whatever. But then that's where, and also, of course, while he's in the office, the warden has all these video screens up with all the things, and one is just the biggest one's Damien. Like there he is, and yeah, Damien ends up then.
The big glasses and the big nose. I don't know what you're trying to say there.
It's so crazy.
I mean, what you're seeing here is that for every one of these like plot milestones, like when he's going along on this mystery, trying to figure stuff out, Taylor keeps inventing these ways to go 50 miles out of his way to go 5 feet. I mean, it would have been much cooler if Batman had come along and snatched up the warden and hung him over a skyscraper roof or something and said, well, what have you been doing? Who's hunting them? What is your connection? And just shake him down like he does everybody else. Instead, he goes through this long, drawn-out con that gets you simple information he could have gotten from anywhere.
Or an interesting thing would be Bruce Wayne comes in and says, hey, I hear this prison's like crazy things. I want to invest in the guys. Crazy things? No, we're letter of the law. Look.
I'm a friend of Scarlet Scott.
Something. And where you get the thing, too, where when Batman's doing this stuff, there's never a gray area. There's never like me and you debating, should Batman do that? It's always just so over the top in your face. And it continues. But before we get back to the prison, we then go off to see this kid being guarded by Bullock. And Batman is a jerk. And again, Bruce, Batman, whatever, they know that Bullock is protecting this kid from and really putting his life on the line. This lady, we assume, who is attacking the kids, also got very close to killing Batman. Like, Batman was laying there dying, and he had to use his belt, and he's giving himself drugs, all that stuff. Bullock is there. Also, it seems in the middle of the night, probably tired. Bullock's not in the greatest of shape, right? I don't want to shame him. And so Batman decides to just come to the window. Like, not just go into the hospital, walk up there and knock on the door. Like, poor Bullock probably have a heart attack or shoot him.
Who's going to stop Batman walking down the hallway?
Yeah, nobody. And especially because they know all this stuff. And he drove the kid and dropped them off. This wasn't the case of a Robin trying to protect identity. This was Batman did go and drop this kid off. And you have to make that entrance because he's Batman. He's a dick. When he does this, he is lucky he doesn't get shot or Bullock ends up having a heart attack because he has to be on edge and he wants to protect this kid. So you go in and then Batman's like, hey, how is he? Oh, he's fine. He woke up screaming, yelling. In my mind, Bullock is one of those guys that Bullock is usually a gray area. Like Bullock and a gray area in my mind, the way I like him is he does the right thing, but if he has to do a little bit wrong, he will do that to do the right thing. He might, hey, search warrant, schmerch, I'm going to go in and do, you know what I mean?
He's dirty when he needs to be.
Yeah, and dirty in the way of just because he's doing something.
Yeah. He doesn't like to hurt people, but he'll turn the other cheek.
Yeah,
or he'll look the other way if it's convenient.
Yeah, and even if it would have been, I mean, I could see Bullock where you would find out that there's a kid who's been doing some bad, and he feels bad for him. Says, listen, I'm going to turn the other cheek, just don't do it again. That sort of thing in a good way. But when he goes and says, Batman says, yeah, I was checking out this prison. It's bad. Looks like, and even with the idea, Bullock leads him into it. Like, yeah, good kid. I don't think he belonged in jail. Well, that's not your call. And again, this is where you start to say, and when I would argue with Eric, I'm not saying that kids should be abused. I'm not saying that the
nobody believes
system's
that.
correct. I don't think, and I there's times when I would probably tell you that I think that there is too many people being arrested. But in this story, you can't just be black and white. It's not just, oh, he's a kid, that means he shouldn't. No, he should also not steal cars. He shouldn't do the things he's doing. But Bullock says, yeah, and shames himself. Says, yeah, I sent kids to that prison. I don't know why. Well, first off, you didn't really send them there. They probably went through a trial and were gone. You're not a judge. You're not this thing. Yeah, you arrested them, but you arrest them for a reason. Don't give me you don't know why. And then the whole play where, who is this Bullock? I'm telling you, we were talking earlier about dictionaries and stuff like that. He actually says, and this is the part where I realized, up to this point, I was rolling my eyes, but at this point, oh my God, he goes, do you know, Batman, more than 3/4 of faultless inmates go back to crime. And usually it's a far worse offense than whatever they went in for. That's the start of it right away. That is just a Wikipedia.
That is not anything Bullock would
Nobody
ever
would say. No,
ever
I
say.
wouldn't say that. And then 70% recidivism. I'm like, I don't even know that Bullock would even know that word, rate. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. And then says, that's almost an Arkham level of failure. What's the point? Who does it help? Where's the reform? Luckily, we realized Bullock's looking at us. The artist specifically looking at us. But again, I'll tell what's the point? I don't know. I'd have to look into it. Who does it help? Probably nobody. That's fine. You're not convincing me of something I already believe in. And it's just over the top and doesn't feel like Bullock throws me out.
This is nothing that any version of Bullock would ever say. He's talking like a legal lawyer, like some kind of activist lawyer quoting
That's what
statistics.
It seems like.
And it's like, this is Bullock we're talking about. If a kid got in his face, he probably pushed the kid down.
Yeah. Or if he saw a kid beating up another kid, he'd probably stop it. Like he's a good enough guy. He's good enough that Batman had him watching this kid. I mean, there's where you show how good he is.
There's no way on earth he's all of a sudden quoting statistics about recidivism. There's no way.
No, and the way that this
by
goes.
the way, for the listening audience, recidivism means return rate.
Yes, return rate.
If somebody gets out on, how often do they commit a crime and go back in?
And that is a problem. That is a real big problem with the prison system. It is, but then people would
Bullock
argue.
is not the kind of person that would care.
No, Bullock would be like,
He would
what
get mad
are you
at the
going to
judges.
do?
He would get mad at the judges for not putting it out, by not giving them a harder sentence.
Yeah, and with that, if people are like, hey, this is just a comic, that's what I want. I do want just a comic. You end up where this issue specifically gets beyond that, where you get the idea. Tom Taylor does this a lot, but then, like I said, he goes a little bit too much because then we go back to the prison and Damien's not supposed to fight. This one kid says, I don't like this food, and he starts getting beaten up. Damien jumps right in and attacks the guard. Again, not something that's going to be looked at finally, and something that is, quite frankly, against the rules. But Damien's trying to protect the kid. Mm-hmm. This is where I really get upset about Tom Taylor, is the idea of what is the repercussions. When you have Damien do what is a heroic thing, supposedly in this, that's fine. But what happens later? Because Damien then not only just, at this point, should actually just go down and completely take his punishment because he's already diverted things away from that kid. Instead, he decides to cordon off the mess area, knocks out the cops, and then takes over the prison like the movie Taps. And now you've gone too far. You have gone way too far. Everybody that you have with you here is in very big trouble. And get this, Damien, you're leaving. You know that you, almost like the idea that he doesn't care. Yeah.
He makes a deal with the warden and says, I'll come out and I'll surrender if you don't touch anybody else. That deal's going to last like 5 minutes.
I had somebody, actually, Wes, and he's like, well, he did make a deal. I'm like, you think that's anything? What, they shake on it?
What is this, an ethical warden all of a sudden? He's not going to pay attention to a deal. He's not going to care.
Especially when you get a kid that just came into the prison. He's been there a day or two, maybe a day, because I think only that night. And he's now taken over the part of the prison and then disappears. He disappears after this. They're not going to know that he broke out. They're going to sit there, and what is going to happen then? This warden is going to take it out on everybody. These kids are in big trouble. And even when they're walking out, Damien's like, we'll figure that out. Again, it goes beyond just a comic book thing. And when you do have the reports of, oh, Damien's caused some problems, right away, Batman should be like, these kids are in very bad danger. Damien is Damien. He's trained. He's all that. Not these kids. And Batman smiles. And it even goes against, like you said, you could make it work that Damien was supposed to get in a fight. It's way beyond that.
I think he told him to obey the rules, but he knew he wouldn't do it. So when he's smiling there, he gives it like a little smirk. I think he's doing that because he knew this is exactly what Damien would do.
I wanted it to be the oh boy, and I better get going there because Damien then.
If you look at that one scene where the doors are barricaded. There are guards knocked out all over the floor. They're probably bleeding. Who knows what's going on? And it's a mess.
What's going to happen to those guards? Like, this is the surface level stuff.
Some of them were just doing their job.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the thing, that you have to do things in a way that's within the deal. This would be nationwide news. Prison taken over by kid inmates. And yet it's almost played out as just, it's a heroic thing. Yeah.
Riot in Gotham.
And so you end up where Damien, like, hey, there's a call from your mom. Hey, Mom. Hey, it's me, Damien the Batman. And says, hey, you got to stop. Give yourself up. And he's like, okay, I'll come out. These kids are like, what? No. They're like, no, because they're about to get the crap kicked out of them. Or worse. And so you end up, the warden makes a deal. But this guy's a piece of crap. And then Damien says solitary, and the guy goes, oh, no, not yet. So this is the detective work that they didn't know was going to be detective work, because he was there to figure out kids' connections and, hey, anybody know this guy? But instead,
he had no idea any of this was going to happen.
Yeah, so instead they take him in and they get him on this gurney deal, and they're going to take his blood. And this is where they're like, oh, eureka, moment. This is but why aren't they just taking blood from everyone? Why are they taking it from just these kids who get in trouble? And also, wouldn't you think, if that's the case and you're making money for the blood, everybody just gets in trouble then? It'd be everybody. Like, somebody would cough and you'd be like, all right, solitary, but first we'll take blood. All that stuff going on. It also ends up being, at this point, Damien probably will not be getting out of jail if this was legit, because he took over the prison. He's not going to be getting out of jail for a very, very long time. But it seems like every kid who got the blood deal, it was like they're going to get out soon. It just doesn't make sense to me overall. But it ends up being, that's the blood that they're getting and Scarlet's getting. And hey, we'll figure it out.
If I could posit a theory, I mean, the thing that I could think of maybe is, if the warden takes the blood and does the experimentation on the kids who got like in big trouble, maybe they wanted to do that because those kids were more aggressive, maybe had some extra testosterone or hyper or something. I don't know.
This starts to feel like the idea of the theories, the conspiracy theories of Hollywood actors are drinking, amniotic fluid and things. Just because you get a young kid's blood. That's the crazy stuff, like vampire stuff of like, I'm going to drink a young kid's blood to be young.
Shakes or something.
Yeah, what's the deal?
Weird.
Like, really, you could probably just pay people as in like a blood bank and just do it there. But like you said, it must be something that they're playing with. You might get it, the testosterone of, well, criminals this, and we'll get statistics again, but it really doesn't make much sense.
It just occurred to me, is this going to be like one of those kind of thinly veiled allegories where Tom Taylor's saying something like the rich people eat
that's
the
what
poor,
it's going to be.
Or,
I
like
thought that from the beginning. I said that from the very beginning, and I still think it is. So then, again, what Batman's doing here, because, yes, it looks like Scarlet's implicated, but I've said, with me and Eric talking about it for issues now, saying to him that by the end, there's going to be the deal. Scarlet at one point was talking to Bruce and was looking around, and Bruce was like, she seems to be talking, thinking somebody's watching, and she's like, I can't talk about this, whatever. It's going to be probably the killer is either her or her mother, but it's going to tie to her mother. It's going to be the idea, the only way that she can keep her mom alive is through this sort of blood transfusion sort of thing, but the only way she could get the money and all this will be through this bad company. And it all twists and turns, and by the end, there'll be nobody bad except the system. And that's what Tom Taylor does a lot. And I'm worried about it. I'm worried because even at the end, you have the truth you need to know. Esma. I'm telling you, every time, I swear to God, it changes the name. But so that's going to be her coming and saying, hey, listen, and knows that he's Bruce and Batman. She ended up looking, whoever it is, she looked at the blood back at the HQ. But the idea, it'll just be, oh, woe is me. I ended up having to do that. And then everything will be wiped away. There's murder that has been done. You can't walk away, and probably will be, well, I'll serve my time, but I'll do my best, and we'll make sure you're okay. But in the meantime, Damian and Batman just broke Damian out of prison right after he caused a prison riot takeover where all these kids are in big trouble.
And he just left them behind.
Just left them behind. He does say, like, Tom Taylor tries to make it like, what about these kids? They don't have fathers to break them out. Oh, we'll deal with them later. Later, you better deal with them in like 3 minutes, because the minute that, I mean, already they're probably all getting the crap kicked out and getting blood taken and whatever. And in the meantime, when they find out that Damian broke out, there's going to be hell to pay. I mean, this is crazy. And it's just, again, you can say to me, it's comics. That's fine. But again, he goes overboard with stuff where I actually legit, I think that some of the things in this issue are so ridiculous, worse than Batman jumping off the moon. Because then I could just say Bat God and laugh. And you know,
that was pretty ridiculous.
This ends up being like, again, you're trying to show a problem, but the way you go about it shows like no solution and makes the problem worse a lot of times. And the art's great. I think the art's
art
really,
is
really good. It
and
just,
you're probably right that Scarlet Scott is Asima or Arsima or whatever her name is. But I think the thing that I like, I do like the mystery piece of this, because I think there's room for a red herring. There's room for Tom Taylor to surprise you and say, well, I'm making it seem really obvious it's this, but surprise, it's really
watch
that.
It's Clayface.
Lady Clayface.
It'll actually be a play that you couldn't even play along. But I'm telling you, you were led to believe it was the doctor. But I think that Eric had said right away that it was the mom. I'm starting to think now that the mom is involved, but in the way that Scarlet's doing it because her mom needs these transfusions and things to keep her alive. And so it might be her. But like you said,
it'll be something dopey, like it's because of the needle fingers, it's like Scarecrow's stepsister or something like that.
Yeah, it'll be something way out. And I do think that Scarlet or her mom, whoever, if it is probably those two, it's going to be the idea of trying to make good because Joe Chill ended up killing the parents, and Martha was so nice to them, and it's trying to and ended up in last issue. Even then, you had Asim say, "Hey, Batman, we're doing the same thing, but it doesn't quite get that they're doing something a little too much and killing people, and that wouldn't be Batman's thing. They're more of the, hey, strong arm of justice here. I'm going to kill people who deserve it." But again, these poor kids, once you get this drawing of blood, now you're thinking they're killed later just to, so they don't talk. It becomes less of a vigilante making this crazy vow that's like the dark version of Batman to now being like, oh, those people will talk and they'll find out.
It seems like Taylor's trying to do something similar to like the relationship between Daredevil and Punisher, where they're two sides of the same coin, but one kills, the other one doesn't, and they're always at odds with each other, but they're sort of heroes, but not really. And you
get that with Batman, like Wrath and things like that too. The darker version of Batman. That again, it's the one bad day. Joker does one thing. Batman ends up having an awful day. He decides to be good, and this is kind of more of a. I'm honoring Batman, but I don't quite get it because I'm a little loony and I'm honoring him the wrong way. But what would you give this?
Let's see, if I go by the written review, and I'll be consistent about that, I gave Detective Comics number 1094 a 5.8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 5.5. It's the art.
Here's the thing, wackiness. There's too much weirdness, like things that were, the pontificating from Bullock doesn't make sense.
Was weird.
Going 5 miles out of your way to go 5 feet, that doesn't make sense. I mean, if you really think about what did they learn? What was the whole point of this? They just figured out that the kids were drawing blood. I mean, you could have figured that out by asking the teens they already had in their custody.
Yeah, they would have been like, what did they do to you? Did they do anything weird? Well, they kept drawing blood. Well, that's weird. Let's look into it. Then Batman breaks into the office, gets the deal. Yeah, you could have saved some things and possibly saved some of these kids some retribution. But I mean, what I really did learn is my compass, it goes south. Okay, but with that, we're going to move on to the next book, and it is Superman, something that I've really enjoyed, and a lot of people have been enjoying this, and it is this Doomsday story that, I don't know, I think that things are rushed a bit, and some of the details are left, on the cutting room floor.
Yep.
But we're going to continue, and that's the one thing I saw some other reviewers saying, that they were like, oh man, like I thought this was going to end in a great way. I kind of realized that this was going to be continuing, and yet it is. Lo and behold, it's going to continue.
Well,
in
better
the
because they got a
summer.
movie coming up.
Yeah, and we're really going to be hit with a lot of Superman stuff that seems pretty cool for the most part. But I don't know. You have a Doomsday story pretty big, and it kind of gets pushed aside to then just say, hey, we'll continue that later and tying it into the Absolute stuff and having all that. But it is Superman number 23, I believe. And it is written by Joshua Williamson, art and cover by Dan Mora, colors by Alejandro Sanchez, letters by Ariana Mayer, and the editor Paul Kaminsky. And we get into this, and it's the Time Trapper who's frozen time to talk to Lois, Superwoman. He already made the offer to Superman of, hey, I need you to kill me. And he wants to be killed because then he gets his final. I wish they said the final evolution, just like Pokemon type of deal, but his final deal is godhood. He's going to become a god. He needs that, but Superman won't kill him. And he's tried to convince him, hey, things are going to go real bad and get real bad. And he's just not going to do it. But overall, there's never like a mention. There's always these like, well, this might happen. Oh, it's going to get dark. So when the Time Trapper says to Lois, hey, I am offering you a deal. I froze time. There's Jimmy. He's about to get blasted. All these things going on. Let me show you. Let's go to the future a bit. Let me show you how things could progress and how things might and whatnot. I'll show you your death, all these things going on to convince you that what I'm trying to do is legit, that it will give a future where Superman can at least have some hope. And Lois says no, but never like, why wouldn't you do your due diligence? He even says, I think this is something Lois Lane would want, the Inquisitor of Truth. And yet she slaps him in the face, which is badass, but doesn't want to know any plans. And this is my biggest problem with the story so far. The Radiant come down and say to Superman and Lois, hey, we got a plan for Doomsday. We'll take him off your hands. We're really pissed at him. Let us take him. And they're kind of talking, well, and that's where, we have a use for him. They don't ask what that use was. They flip out. Oh my God, Lois started screaming, there it is. We knew you'd say it, whatever. No. Ask the plan. What is your plan? Go and sit down for a little. Have a dinner and say, what is your exact plan of how you're going to take care of Doomsday? Well, we have this. If you don't like it, then you don't. But with Time Trapper, hey, this thing, go and see it. There's no fuss, no muss. He's already frozen time. Just go see what's going on. It could be a trap, but I don't think it is. And she seems tough enough to take that. But she just says no. And
yeah, I think I'm going to disagree a little bit. I think I'm with her on this one, not because it would have made sense to hear him out and understand what his plan is, but I think in this case, what's happening is that Lois is basically saying, you already talked to my husband. He told you no. I'm not going to disrespect him by hearing him out when he said no. So I'm going to support my husband.
Superman never even asked what the plan was. They both said no because it's Doomsday.
Yeah.
But this is the Time Trapper Doomsday who has evolved. I would at least say, okay, what do you mean by bad? I don't think he's going to say, well, I'm not going to tell you that, because he wants to. He wants to get this and decide if he's lying or whatnot. But even then, we never had a scene where Superman said, oh, get this, Time Trapper said that. All she says is, yeah, he said no to your crazy plan, but we don't know what that plan is. And then the Radiant deal, we didn't know what their plan was. So then all in all, it's just like he says, fine then. I'm going to snap my fingers and screw it. And then realize what's
you're
that?
right that they never really heard out the full plan from Radiant, but I got the impression that he was intending to kill him, that was his plan. He just never really spelled it out what it's supposed to be. But that would be bad because he would just resurrect and become stronger.
Here's the deal then Radiant, if they said we're going to kill him, and they know Doomsday. I mean, They were a planet devastated. They have to know that if they do kill him, he's not going to be able to be killed that way. So what is the deal? I swear to God, they're like, oh, we're going to put him on a farm. He's going to till the land. Like, okay, that's pretty good. So they never ask. And the big play isn't Doomsday of the current. It's Doomsday Time Trapper, that if you kill him, he becomes a god. You can't do that.
I think she's just saying no because her husband said no.
It might
being supportive. I need you to be more romantic here, Jim.
I love this.
I need you to be in touch with your heart.
I'm sitting there. I'm gonna go, and I'm like, yep. Tanya just made. She's not gonna make a deal with him. Like,
this is what a good wife does.
You're asking
Jim.
the
I'm just letting you know
thing.
This is what a good wife should do. A good spouse. A good spouse.
Time Trapper should have started doing the noise of the whip, and then she'd get mad. Oh, I'll tell you.
Oh, what's the matter? Are you the little woman?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
that would have
exactly.
been hilarious.
Oh,
that would have been
You have
hilarious.
to follow what your husband says. Why don't you
Oh.
go back to the
Why
kitchen?
don't you go bake me some
Oh, it'd be
cookies,
so
girlie?
good. Where's
Oh,
my
that would be
pot pie? That
that
would
would
be
be
the best.
fantastic.
And then she's like,
Can't think
"Screw
for
this."
yourself, huh? Can't think
See,
for yourself, huh?
Time Trapper's not thinking ahead. He could have done that. But again, the Radiant, which is a big thing. That's a cool thing. Back to the Hunter Prey story, all that stuff. And it just is there to be there at points. And that's my biggest problem. I still like this series a lot. And I think this story, while we end up having to wait till the summer, probably will be good when it comes back. It's just that you're leaving some interesting things on the table that I think with their due diligence they would do. But again, I said with Tom Taylor, he will push things, but so will Joshua. Now it's comic book things, but he's pushing them forward a little too much. And then at the end, you'll even say the idea he does too much. And I think that in the story, he added a bit too much.
Yeah, it's
And
too
you got
much.
to get out of it. And suddenly we're getting out because you're going to do some other things. Then you have the movie. Then we're going to come back to it. But Jimmy ends up in big trouble. You have Lois, and she does block the blast, but not fully. She gets there quick enough that Jimmy is not killed. I actually think that one of the plays should have been let Jimmy stew until the summer, and we don't know if he's going to survive or live or die. And almost the idea that we think he might be dead. I think that would have been a little bit more powerful of, oh my God, like he's in a coma. But they're like, but by the point they get to him, like, he'll be fine. He just will take time for his hands. I'm like, what is that? Like, really? And so you end up
I'm not
having
sure
that.
why they focused on the hands. It always seemed weird to me.
It must
I mean,
be a story set up that it's going to be something where he's not going to be able to do something because his hands and he'll be in trouble.
I mean, it's already weird that he's this close and he can't recognize Lois.
Well, we'll get to that. Does Silver
Yeah.
Banshee never look at Lois? Because by the end, I don't know what she's thinking, but this is the big play here. And this is the biggest part, I think, of this, maybe the whole arc. The idea that Time Trapper Doomsday suddenly realizes, wait a second, that Radiant guy wants to kill me. I think I can use that. Like, he should have went to him immediately. He could have went right to him and said, hey, I want to die. I don't even think he'd get the words out. He would have been dead, ascended to godhood, boom. But in the meantime, they end up where they're going to fight. Superman goes Red K, and he goes in Time Trappers, beating the crap out of him again.
Now here, this is an interesting question because I just submitted the review for Green Lantern 20. Do you think there's a connection between Superman's Red K
I don't
and
think
the fracture of the emotional
I
spectrum?
wish, but it's the Red K, and they've been monitoring it for a while. It'd be really
Can you
cool.
imagine Superman as a Rage Lantern?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be really cool. Like, I mean, I'm telling you, that crazy, guy, the what's it called, the blacksmith. That guy went over the top. Again, another guy who had a really bad day. Boy, his wife or fate partner. What a
Fate
piece of
Margaret, yeah.
crap. Holy
Weird name.
moly, yeah. So this is the thing, too, where Superman is beating the living crap out of Time Trapper. His Red K rage. Why does Time Trapper open his mouth? Why would you? You know that Superman is not going to, he doesn't want to kill you. He's already stopped before. He goes, yes, Superman, give me your rage. That breaks him out of it. I wouldn't talk. Just accept your death and become a god. But he has to open his mouth, and that's what kind of pulls Superman out. In the meantime, Lex is figuring, and we already know Lex remembers some things. We already know past the special, because that was where they needed some tech and things, and Lex was able to send it off to, I believe at that point, Steelworks, I think it was, but ends up, or no, it was Mr. Terrific. He needed that info in the tech. So Lex knows more, but in this, he says to Lena, hey, get me a suit. Now, it should have been the power suit. It should have been full out power suit. Would have been really cool. It's not. It's that kind of newfangled deal, but it looks like Lex is back. And Lex has to come up with an idea. Now, this is my other contention here. My bone of contention is the idea that Superman and Superwoman Lois, they've done nothing and they're all out of ideas. They're getting attacked. It's not like they can go and think things out. Lois has turned down the Time Trapper. So there is mayhem going, and the city is also in big trouble. So Lex comes up with an idea, and we saw that it would probably be, I think I even said it last issue, it would be a bottled city thing. It is a Brainiac deal, because that's what Lex remembered. So he has this gun that I don't know who could carry this thing, but he ends up and he's going to blast the entire battle and put it in a bottle. Now, in
Yeah,
the meantime,
that gun is way too big for a human being to carry.
look at that thing. It's huge. So he goes in.
Now, remind me, before we get to that part, remind me, can Doomsday fly?
I think he jumps. I think he jumps a lot. That almost plays with the idea of the, Superman when he didn't fly and jump.
So
I know that he would leap around.
Prevent like Clark and Lois working together to like hit him hard and then shoot him into orbit toward the sun or something like
space
that.
And then keep an eye on him. Because again, now
put him on the moon.
It's a weird play. I guess if you would it be if you threw Doomsday out of a plane and he died, he might come back evolved to fly because he died because he couldn't fly. But there's always that weird, that's kind of a crazy deal of him evolving. But no, he usually jumps around. And you could just have him float in space. Yeah, you could have him float in space and put a tracker on. Don't just leave him out. There's things you can do. And they did have him in stasis, but then the Radiant came down and they needed him to come out. Like all this stuff. Like just put him back there. But the Radiant and this whole aftermath bit, it's also an invasion. So what ends up happening, and it is funny that when Lex has this gun and he's going to shoot the battle, it just seems like he's going to shoot a couple guys. He ends up supposedly shooting the whole fleet because they're in the battle as well when you look. But Superman's going to get thrown into it. And Lois has to go and, get him. She flies in and grabs him. He yells no. And then, boom, you end up having this whole deal going. Now, I thought also that Time Trapper was involved, but at the end, obviously, he's in the end of time, whatever the case may be, if he gets through this, what. But you end up having him also put it up, and he gets the fleet, and they put him in the bottled city. And it's fine. I mean, in my mind, I'm like, it stops the battle for now. He says at one point, and the weirdest thing, the battle's still going. So they're fighting this battle, but real slow motion. Like, everything, because they're like the slowing time. And somehow...
So at best, it's a stalling tactic.
Yeah. Figure out something else. But they freak out on him. What did you do? And one of the big things I thought was Superman saying Luthor, not Lex. He's been saying Lex because him and they've been buddies, kind of. And he says, you sound confident, ... Luthor, as in, I know you're back, but... He's the one who told him to come back and said that he could do well. And it doesn't mean you have to revert, but almost like shaming him here in a real subtle way. It may not even mean it, but when he says that, like, you sound confident, Luthor. I'm like, oh, God, man, you're just pushing him to be bad again. But he says Raiden and his army are trapped in there, too.
But look right behind him. Look right behind him. There are skyscrapers that are fallen. People are dead. People
saved
are dying.
The day. He saved the day.
My goodness.
And Mercy's the one who says, if Doomsday dies because of time slowing down, who knows what kind of powers? And that's the thing. The Radiant are fighting Doomsday. I don't think the time slowing down. I think that what she's saying is if he dies because the time slowed down, then when he comes back, the slowing down of time won't affect him, then he can get out. But he's not going to die because it slowed down. He's probably going to die because the Radiant had him. The Radiant hit him with a laser.
Doomsday and Radiant are fighting at the same rate of speed. So for them, relative to everybody else, it's still like natural time.
And that's where I get it, where the evolution of the powers, where it is kind of up for grabs. Like the idea, who is the one who says, oh, well, you died? Like, again, if I end up saying I pushed him out of a plane, did he die because he couldn't fly? Did he die because there's gravity? So what would he evolve with? And Mercy's almost saying because he's in there, and would die while time slowed down, that he would evolve past the time slowing down. But that's not going to be why he's dead. He's going to die from a specific reason that happens in this fight, it seems. Now, the big to-do would be if the Time Trapper was in there, and oh God, we can't let him die. Also, I'm telling you, if they end up fixing this, everybody on Kandor should immediately be called and told, because Superman's taken all this time, can't even figure out how to do that. But they'll be able to fix this. I'm like, whatever. But you end up where this whole play of them shaming Lex because Lex is going to go back to being bad, which some people will applaud. I like Lex being good, but in a shady way. But in the meantime, they're like, oh my God, Jimmy. That's where they go.
Is Time Trapper not in there? Because the way the panel progression works out, Superman gets knocked out of the way because he's in the line of fire.
Well,
which is
here's
where Time
what I
Trapper
can tell you. If Time Trapper's in there, we know he doesn't die because then he's at the end of time still wanting to die. By the end, there's timey-wimey stuff.
Yeah.
So it's weird. Again, I say he might be in there, but it pretty much is inconsequential because he's still at the end of time wanting to die.
Yeah.
So with that, it's weird and kind of, I don't know that you should have had Superman punching Time Trapper and then have to get out of the way. That kind of, you should have had that Time Trapper ended up disappearing right before, and then we could say, oh God, we almost had him. But
this is the kind of comic where you look at it and you say, ooh, cool, big fights. Ooh, cool, big
but when
guns
you think
blasting and
about
doing all
it,
kinds of things. But if you sit and think through the details, which is where Williamson always gets in trouble, it starts. You find all these little holes you start poking
I
at.
still think it's pretty good.
Nuts.
It's pretty big,
Yeah,
and I'm
I did like
excited.
it.
I'm excited
like it.
to see it in the summer. It's just some of these things have been kind of nitpicks and getting to me to this then ending for now in a way that just seemed rushed and not as well thought out as I thought some of the stuff that Joshua Williamson has done with Superman since he came back for this All In, and even a little before that. But Jimmy, he's going to be okay, but he won't be able to use his hands. Like, why not just say he's in a coma?
That was so specific, and I'm not sure what they were going with that.
It's very odd.
Especially because if you look at how that blast hit, it looked like his legs were more exposed than anything else.
Yeah, and so why not? I'm telling you, is Jimmy okay?
I mean, I guess they're trying to say that he can't take pictures because they're setting something else.
It's only going to be for a little bit, some time. It's weird. I was thinking of like a Princess Bride thing where he's going to have to pretend that he can use his hands at some point. I don't know.
So it's weird.
In that, just say he's in a coma. Will he survive? We don't know. We're going to have to wait because then we stew on this and people get worried, and you're going to have to wait till the summer probably to actually figure out some things or whatnot. And that means there's tension. There's also some repercussions and some weight to it. But just telling me that he's going to be okay, but his hands will need some time. Like, okay. And Lois is upset. They even asked Perry's like, where's Lois? Oh, she's hung up at the office, but she's upset. So she's out as Superwoman, just kind of hanging, just floating there. Superman comes and says, listen, you got to go see Jimmy. And she says, it's all my fault. And it's true. This is a good scene until it progresses in my mind, because she did think it was fun and games. She knew some of it, but the idea was, and she's had this moment already in this arc and the things of, I thought that I was invulnerable. I'm not. All this. And look, I got Jimmy, hurt. Silver Banshee shows up and starts, doing her Banshee cry. And then says, I don't know who you are, woman who looks exactly like Lois and doesn't have a mask, but Jimmy's in trouble because the big play would be her showing up and seeing it's Lois, right? Like saying, how dare you? So wait a minute, it's Lois? And then freaking out. He's your best. No, she just doesn't recognize that it's Lois. And even then you would worry when Jimmy comes out of whatever he's under and whatever, if she's going to say it's Lois, he's going to be upset. So you could have had a more powerful scene, I think, if she recognized the obvious that there's Lois without a mask, just the thing.
And I still don't get why is she blaming Lois?
I guess because it was
she was there.
No, because they hid her identity, and Jimmy was so gung ho of I got to get this picture, that he put himself in harm's way. But that's his fault.
That's his fault. So why is she blaming him?
It's because he's hurt. And again, if he's still in a coma, it has more weight. Like, how dare you make it so that he won't be able to use his hands for 3 weeks? It's just to get this whole play. You have yourself a supervillain, miss.
Weak. That's a weak excuse.
The worst, though, is you have Lois, who you obviously should see is Superwoman. And then, by the way, Superman, you look a lot like Clark because you're next to Lois, and this is a little bit crazy. And then all of a sudden they have to figure out what to do with Silver Banshee because she may be able to expose. And also if she says, I think that's Clark. Oh, no, I'm having a heart attack. Like there's a brain aneurysm. There's a lot of shit going down there that really could have played, but her just not recognizing it's Lois is crazy.
It would have made more sense if it was like the whole the conductor on the train conundrum where Lois had a chance to save one or the other, and she chose like Superman getting hit rather than Jimmy. So she left Jimmy. She should have saved him because he was weaker, and you didn't try to save him when you could have, or something like that. But the way they did it here was just dumb.
Like that, she's yelling, and she's like, "You must be somebody important." Because it's Lois.
Looks exactly like Lois.
Like, I don't know why you have that. I don't know why you have that. Yeah, really. I don't know why you have that Lois costume on with the wrong eye color. But yay! At one point, it was funny because when Superman first goes, her hair is in her face. She's looking down, but that's not the case when it comes to this. It's straight up Lois. But yeah, then we end up with Zod. He doesn't have his powers. That's a Lois connection. It seemed after Absolute Power somehow. The Absolute Power and the crazy Amazo robots reached out into space and grabbed the powers of Zod, but there you go.
How much is left over from the Kneel Before Zod thing?
Hardly anything, except that he was on his way back, and that's the ship. That series was so wacky. Anyway,
now, here's the thing I don't understand about this scene. If his powers are completely gone, then they say it outright, explicitly, your powers are completely gone. How does he have the strength to reach out and squish an alien's head with one hand?
He's still jacked. I mean, look at those arms. He's still working out.
And
I don't know that squishy guy.
That. I mean, he is jacked, but still.
Here's what you can't do. When you know the one secret, you don't tell Zod you know that one secret. This is comic book 101. If you know an identity, just pretend you don't. Don't say, hey, by the way, I know your identity. It's safe with me. Hey, Zod, I know you're not powered. Now, he does say, and what it seemed at first was he would be half powered. And so the idea of the yellow sun, he probably still, but here he's not. I mean, he's depleted. They have to find a yellow sun.
Yeah.
Also doing the test, not knowing that the powers were taken, I guess, is the idea of, hey, we got to get this yellow sun. When he gets there, we'll see if they keep
he's coming
playing.
Back to Earth.
Yeah, he's coming back, and he's going to be after Lois. He's going to end up winning his powers once he recognizes it, but that's the big play. And this guy gets his head just completely popped like a grape. Because
then the Atoms show up with their weird gobstopper machine, and then
exactly. It goes, and everything's fine. Again, by the time he gets back, it probably would be easy peasy like that. Then we go and we have the Legion, the Absolute Legion that we had in the All-In special. Where they have gone to the end of time, it looks like, with the Time Trapper, and they're willing to kill him. They want to erase his idea of who Superman is, but this is something we're going to have to wait for, because is it going to be an absolute universe thing? Are they looking for info on their Superman? It's all up in the air, but it is kind of a crazy deal. And in that, you do even have that Time Trapper say at one point, hey, when Doomsday comes back, you're going to be really begging me. And this is a guy talking with experience from the end of time. So we would know, and we know eventually that will happen. But it is still just, throw that out there. This may be stuff for 2 years from now. It may be stuff that they start getting to this summer. I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like they're setting up the crossover with the
and I don't think that'll be this summer just yet. I think that's like another year, but we'll see.
But what's weird to me, this is the first time we've seen the, what would you call them, Absolute Legionnaires?
Absolute Legion.
Since the All-In special, which was almost, 4 or 5 months ago? That was a while ago.
Yeah. So they're there at the end. And it looks like, one guy might be just about to kill. They might be, killing Time Trapper. He'll become a god. But what does that mean? We'll have to see. I don't know either. Again, I don't want to make it seem like we're just here to rip things apart and nitpick and whatever, but these
overall,
things
I
are
like
big.
This issue.
Yeah, I do too.
I like this issue. I think
the art's great.
All these multiple epilogues were too much. It was too much. You're trying to introduce too many things just out of the blue for no reason, and it's like, okay, we're not ready to.
And I want the here and now.
Keep focused.
I want the here and now. I'm never like, in those books, they're like, hey, Joshua Williamson has done it multiple times. Of this is what's coming in 2025, and you get all
really
these things.
Distracted.
He does.
Really distracted,
and that's why too many things go. So
plus, the whole Luthor explanation was really fuzzy about how that Kandor bottle was supposed to work.
Yeah, I like Luthor, and I thought he did the right thing.
I like the idea, but
I think he did the right thing. But then they had to make it like they shamed him for some reason. And then it says at the end, to be continued this summer. Be here next month for Superman versus Mercy. Which only means to me that Superman's going to still flip out about Luthor, and then Mercy's going to use her Mega Man arm and start fighting. We'll see.
But if you get rid of one of these epilogues, like maybe the Zod one, you could have used that extra page or two to show what's going on inside the bottle. That would have made more sense to keep it clear.
Well, there we go. What would you give it?
Let's see. I did also have a written review for this one, so I gave it what did I give it? 7.8 out of 10.
7.8. I was going to tell you. I knew what your score was. I read your review, but I'm a 7. I'm a 7.
Maybe a little bit higher than yours, but I mean, overall, I did like it. I think all those epilogues and the stuff they crammed at the end of it was a little too much.
And I think some of the things do set up some cool stuff. It's just the way they got to it. Some of it was rushed, some of it was forced, and I'm willing to just say, okay, this was a really odd ending to an arc that I think should have been bigger. Now we have to wait to see what happens in the summer, but also just some things should have been fleshed out a little more and explained a bit more, not just him bad, me fight, hey, Bottled City, boom.
Yeah,
I still want
in the
Lex
realm
to
of
be
all
good.
things written by Joshua Williamson, this is one of the better ones.
Yeah. So I'm a 7, you're a 7.8. So not bad.
Yeah.
But before we go, because this will be the books that we're talking about. Let everybody know where you can go. Obviously, they know or should know the Weird Science stuff, but where else can they find you, Gabe?
Yeah, because for those who don't know me, I also do reviews for the site that I own and manage, which is Comical Opinions. So go to @Comical Opinions on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, all the socials.
I'll have it in the show notes.
Yeah,
as well.
I appreciate that. And so on that site, we cover all the things that are not the big two. A lot of Image, all the Ghost Machine stuff, all the Skybound stuff, a lot of the smaller publishers like Mad Cave and Dynamite, what have you. So if you're interested in comics that are outside of just Marvel and DC, that's the place to be.
And seriously, if you're not reading some of stuff like the Energon stuff or the Ghost Machine stuff, you really should, because it is really, really good and worth checking out, as well as a bunch of other things as well. Just don't pay attention to Gabe's G.I. Joe reviews. But
Jordi Belair is killing me with those colors. Oh, she's killing me with those colors. Terrible.
Everybody has their own opinion.
Those colors are so terrible.
I know you hate them. Oh my goodness,
it's so ugly.
Gabe strikes
muddy
again.
and brown.
But yes, check out Gabe's stuff. I'll have all the links to everything in the show notes of the show. But thanks, Gabe, for joining me. I have lots of plans for you in the future.
Oh boy,
some
looking forward
good,
to it.
some bad, but we will figure things out. But I hope everybody enjoyed you coming by and really filling in at the last second. I do appreciate it. I asked you at the last second.
I'm happy to help.
With all of that, we will go off to something. I don't know what it will be, but we'll finish that up. And thanks, Gabe, and we'll talk to you later.
Well, this is the story of the continuity kid. He don't go against the canon, it's something he forbids. So if he shows up, you better make sure he don't snap. He don't mess with your story over continuity crap. The continuity kid, he never has no fun. Always worried about the details of a long forgotten run. So even if he likes something, he never hesitates to find a little nitpick and shower it with tons of hate. So if you like comics, you better be aware the continuity kid is always pulling out his hair. That's no good way to have fun, you'll see. Don't kill yourself over continuity crap. Well, this is the story of the continuity kid. He don't go against the canon, it's something he forbids. So if he shows up, you better make sure he don't snap. He don't mess with your story over continuity crap. No, he don't mess with your story over continuity crap.
And we are back, and I'm here with my man, Zach. What up, Zach?
What's up, Jim?
What is up is some pretty big books, Justice League Unlimited and Green Lantern. Some books I saw this week that people did enjoy. And I guess you even said it right before we started. It's kind of surface level enjoyment. I would say more of the Green Lantern book than the JLU book, but they're both okay.
Yeah.
I didn't get angry reading them. I think that the part of the Justice League Unlimited, which we will start with, the problem is there's too many characters. You have a big thing going on with this Inferno, but I really don't know what is actually going on except what is there in front of you. The rainforest is burning. And in these, even in the Green Lantern that we'll do next, I expect like the idea of the setup and whatnot to have like maybe a clever way of resolving it, maybe something big, because some of these things would feel big, but yet they're just kind of like, hey, let's get this, and boom, it's done. Especially in this Justice League Unlimited. Now,
absolutely,
in this, it's going to involve the Green. You're going to have Levi's already in trouble. We saw that, the Swamp Thing. And then at one point, you do end up having like, oh, Justice League Green. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool concept, though. I don't think it would be a book. I think it might be in this book. I think cool. that would be one of the separate teams. And I hope that it does get to that, where we don't have 50 million characters going at one problem where all of a sudden we'll have a 3-issue arc with the Justice League Green. Then we'll have, hey, we'll do this. Or, mix and match and stuff like that would be pretty cool. But a weird play because we get the character of Tefe in here, which is Swamp Thing / Constantine / Abigail, our daughter, and not really explained well. She ended up popping up in the, what's his name, Ram V's Swamp Thing, but barely. And there's a lot to go on with the character, especially in a book that has Constantine actually in it. With the deal, I thought there was going to be some more with that, but maybe we'll get it down the line. But it just felt like by the end, I felt like I had gone through a bit of a fight here, but I didn't really feel like it mattered much. It felt like a lot of surface level stuff, but I'll give you the credits. It's Justice League Unlimited #4, written by Mark Waid, art by Dan Mora, Tamara Bonvillain Blanc on colors, and Ariana Mayer on letters. And it looks like the editor would be Paul Kaminsky with associate editor Marquise Draper. But we go into this and you kind of flip back and forth with time too. You get 10 minutes earlier than this. I'm like, didn't really need that. You could have just said, hey, Mr. Terrific, and it's, Red Tornado, hey, we should get somebody else to help. We have this big problem, the rainforest burning. Who else is connected with the Green? They do mention Poison Ivy. I think it's a shame that they don't go and get Poison Ivy as well as Tefe. Get both of them. Get the whole deal. And I think it would have been a cool play again because a lot of people, I did like the Feral Trees, right? But the whole play of the actual series, I still think that it could get some more eyes on it and maybe get that through a Justice League, which should be the biggest book yet. I still don't hear a lot of people talk about this book. And I don't know, it's because maybe it's called Justice League United because it hasn't really settled on a team. It's all over the place, or just that it's Mark Waid and people are against him. But I don't hear a lot of people talking, but still, it's a big book. Maybe, do that with a lot of things, add a bunch of characters in so you can push them off to the other books. But they do mention, Poison Ivy. I'm so desperate I get Poison Ivy, but how about we do this? Let's get Tefe Holland. And this is where they should have played it out a bit of the character because she is interesting. Yeah. You said you read Brian K. Vaughan's deal with her, which is probably the definitive deal of her. That's where she even becomes, the main character. She has a really cool connection to the Green, but also magic. And the way it is a little sus how she was kind of born. There's a lot of people rolling their eyes about, okay, well, Alec takes over Constantine to kind of do it because Swamp Thing can't procreate. But wants to do this with the Sprout, which is what she was. She is part of the Green. That's why the thing is, it's a really cool deal. But just saying Tefe Holland might get enough people interested enough to look it up. But there's some things you might be able to bring up in this that really, show you and highlight a character that's very interesting and some we haven't seen much, especially since the New 52. But you have Mr. Terrific go to her and say, hey, it is funny. I like this. There's going to be something in the Green Lantern that we'll talk about next that's kind of similar where they change things up because you're going to ask people to be on the Justice League. Some people are going to say no. Yeah. You can't just have it. Yeah, that'd be great. Like some people will say no just because they're busy or now I have a family, whatever the case may be. But they go to Tefe and really in a kind of a BS sort of way. They need her desperately for this and then just show up and like, oh yeah, like if I was her, I'm like, I think that I've heard about this. Why didn't you come before? Like, why now when I see all these things about, the rainforest, though suddenly it affects her right after they say, hey, you should join because it's affecting the Green. I mean, the rainforest burning, that's a huge thing. And she throws the transporter card down, but then ends up, obviously joining. But again, you go through this, 10 minutes early, then this, then that. I don't think that was really needed because of just the idea of going, recruiting her and go. In the meantime, you do then go to the rainforest. And I do love Dan Mora's art. Usually, I'm not saying this is bad. There are points where it gets a little bit just too busy. Yes, absolutely. Some of these panels at the beginning when they first get there, when Tefe and Mr. Terrific get to I'm like, I couldn't really get exactly what was going on. Like you get Stargirl, she's blasting crap and then she's saved there, but it ended up, Stripe ends up saving her. I think it could have been a better played, but again, one of the biggest problems is there's so many characters in this. And I think that what they're doing is trying to show you how many hands are on deck. Like we've thrown everything at this and we can't stop it because, again, maybe it should have been spelled out a little more as well. You see Wonder Woman whapping that one deal. Maybe with the thing that I hate with the clenched fist attack that doesn't do anything, but they're those rage tower type things, those fire towers. They take down one, then others get stronger. And when you bring something up, you say it says hundreds of burning towers still surround the rainforest. And it turns out every time we smash one, the rest get even harder to topple. That seems like it's set up for us to get a solution then of how you would stop them, but you don't really. Like, that's just said, and then we kind of just move past it because the solution is Teffi.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. And yeah, it makes it feel like a lot of the setup didn't matter, that they were just idiots for not getting her right away. That's the problem I have by the end, is that the solution is just getting this one character who then pretty much solves everything by doing things like going in the green with Aquaman and then kind of infusing magic into Levi Kamei, the Swamp Thing. And again, it kind of felt like, why did we have all this set up for this, only at the end to have the Inferno say, hey, they stopped us now, but that's not our real big plan. So in that, though, you get some characters. I mean, you get characters that you don't normally have and whatnot, but I don't know, anything. We'll keep going through it, but there's just not that much going on with a lot of things seemingly going on in the rainforest. I'm interested in the things with Martian Manhunter, though.
Yeah.
You get that. And now, again, though, when you end up having a problem with, these towers, I mean, it seems like something maybe Batman should have been around to maybe solve, but he's in Egypt trying to track down Martian Manhunter. Maybe wait till later for this.
Yeah.
Do you agree? I mean,
I definitely agree.
The world-ending situation, and Batman's like, I'm going to go off to Egypt
I'm going globetrotting.
I'm gonna get Martian Manhunter's groove back. And while you guys do that, it just felt weird. Maybe do this afterwards. Maybe have it as an epilogue. But you end up with it's cool. Batman goes in. Now, Batman also in this, where Mark Waid has to really push the idea that if Batman had a lantern that had a little bit of Martian Manhunter is going to shit his pants because he's got a lantern. He's been around. The idea of fire, it does give him like a PTSD, but they get so crazed with this idea of fire when I keep bringing up the idea when people say, yeah, but don't you get it? Fire hurts him. I'm like, fire hurts me. I'm not upset about a lantern that Batman's holding. I mean, again, it might end up triggering him, but if that little thing triggers him that much, he's got some real big problems. But he ends up saying, hey, Martian Manhunter, we realize what's going on. You go from there. Because really, this is just, hey, we love you, buddy, right? I mean, That's what it is. But it's nice enough. But in the middle of an inferno going on in the rainforest where everybody seems to be dying, it just feels weird that Batman just goes off at this point to, hey, John, we love you. Love you, man.
Well, don't you know, Jim? He's the heart and soul of the Justice League, don't you know?
Yeah, he is. He is the heart and soul. I'll tell you, I'll admit, and people could get mad, I'm not a huge Martian Manhunter fan. But I get it. But still,
I get it.
I think John should be like, Batman, you don't have to blow smoke up my ass. I understand. But he just wants to be left alone, right?
Yeah.
And he wants to be left alone because he doesn't have his powers. And so he doesn't want to be putting people in compromise and put him in danger, he says. Even though, I mean, like, you have Red Tornado, and that guy doesn't even have a body. They figured out something for him. He's got his AI deal going.
I'm sure Martian Manhunter. Why don't you just go talk to them?
Exactly. Seriously, just go and grab that. That's a weird play, too, because that comes up in a lot of things where even in Superman this week, when you have Zod coming back to Earth, you would think to get his powers back from Lois. No. Just go to the Adam Project. They have it all taken care of. But it's always like a time issue with me. I'm like, they don't say it, but like, are they going to play the idea? Well, this happens before then, and then you get all wonky. But you go from there because, again, it really is just you're the heart and soul, right?
Yeah, Batman just gives him the whole rah-rah speech. He's like, listen, I know how it feels. Without your powers, you feel like you're not a hero anymore. You feel like you just can't contribute. But I'm telling you, you are the heart and soul of this league, John. And we will help you, while he's doing that, we go back to the rainforest, and all of a sudden, Dr. Occult shows back up, and is just like, he was taken. What for? I don't
he
know.
was taken, then he comes back, and now he's on
He
fire.
served no. I thought he was going to be the linchpin. I thought he was going to like fight his way back and it's like, I have a way to defeat them. Nope. No.
No, and that's the weird play of this story. And again, this is a very, very quick issue because a lot of it is, and this is where I think the problem with the big team is you're going to get a lot of pomp and circumstance. You're going to get a lot of window dressing because you want to show Constantine and Zatanna. So what can you do with them? You know, and even Xanthi, the magic users, they're there, and Dr. Occult comes back on fire. Oh no, he's human kindling. What can we do? You have Zatanna talks backwards, and off we go. I mean, it's almost like you have the checklist of, I have to do something with those characters. And you don't really have much to do with those characters because what they're doing isn't working. And they're not even the idea where, okay, once you have, you know, Tefe show up like, okay, we'll combine here. We'll give her all this. It's just, they're just kind of there fighting their deal. So you have to check in with them. But then you get that weird play, and I'll give it back to you, where Aquaman, at one point, he just seems to be just hanging. Like, he's there, and he's like, you know, looking at one point,
They
I thought
make
he
a
was in
joke
the
about
thinker
it. Like,
deal. Yeah.
why are you here at the forest fire? He's like, I don't know.
Yeah, she says, isn't a forest fire like the worst place for you to be? He's like, yeah, kind of, but oh well. And then she says, well, let me help you. And then, welcome to the green. They go into the green. It looks cool.
Yeah.
Right? You're
looks
going
cool.
there. But then you get that weird play of the green and an inferno. And oh my God, the green's fighting back against Aquaman. And what's going on with the waves, the currents? It gets a little bit confusing again
Yeah.
of exactly what it is, and says, oh, Inferno might be manipulating the green to block you, you know, saying to Tefe, and like, well, how does that work? And what are they doing? I guess we will have to wait. And that's why I think if you're going to be involved with this Inferno going forward, and maybe it's one of those, this will be put aside for a bit. And then when we come back, we may need a Justice League green to deal with that, because it seems like they can go in the green and manipulate it. That is wacky. They have commandeered or taken down Levi, but still, it felt weird to not really explain a lot of things. And yeah, Aquaman says, I can feel moisture. It's refreshing. And then she almost shames him. Like the idea whether or not he needs water, right? And she's like, it shouldn't. It's tears of the green. It's like, it's still helping me, you know, lady. But
what do you want from him? He's a fish out of water.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, he needs water, but if it's tears, whatever. He's like, this is refreshing, but oh my goodness. And yeah, and then it's grabbing him and all that going on. And that's where I'm saying, he says, but like all energies, the green has wave currents. You're going to make it so he can kind of do some things in there. But when they do end up coming face to face with this Inferno deal, I'm telling you, I get a little lost on the overall story and what they are, what they mean, and how this is played out. It's very ambiguous and things like that, where you end up where they're like, there he is, you know, can you hear me? Can you hear me? And like, guarding, more accurate, because they say, oh my God, they're watching them and they're guarding. And it gets a little convoluted with this whole play with these guys. And then they start getting all upset. And then you have the Parliament of Trees gets called in, seemingly by Aquaman.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
Yeah, and again, he was like, okay, this is like, just because you go into something and says, oh, there's waves and currents here, doesn't mean that you're underwater. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I could spin anything to get towards that as well. Like, oh, the tide's turned. That means he can do something because I said tide. But it was weird. It was weird the way that it was spelled out.
How is he like calling out to them? Like, is he calling the water droplets on them or from them? But that doesn't mean you can telepathically talk to them. It's like, oh, I'm summoning them.
And they're like, no, get away from me, release me. And the Parliament of Trees, which should have reacted before, kind of jump in.
Yeah, and then wait till now.
Yeah, they're just waiting. And
they're sitting crying like freaking pariah.
The green starts to go, you know, at 11, even have Firestorm say, oh my God, she did it, Tefe. Oh, you know, what did she do? And when she comes out, she says, I gave your magic to Levi. Now, never explains how that would be, but she's also infused with magic as well, but ended up being able to help Levi fix him, revive him with the magic combined with the green. Yeah, so he ends up going. And I don't know, this big giant thing, you do see that it's his face kind of deal, but I did have to look a bit. It was like one of those things where you have the magic pictures and like, oh, it's a boat. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. In that, though, that's where you get everybody kind of after this, like, oh my God, that was the craziest thing ever. telling you, by the end, it just felt like to me is let's get Tefe, boom, 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 done. It seemed very easy once you got her. And luckily, she took Aquaman in, because without that, they would have been really screwed, I guess. But I don't really get a lot of it. It just seemed to end in a big way, but I didn't really get exactly like the idea of, oh my God, that was clever. Oh my God, I get it. That was huge. It just felt like, they just wanted to push them out of the way and get that little bit done, because they do end up saying like, hey, you see them, then they're like, we will keep fighting and then we'll get them down, whatever. But in the meantime, you have to remind them we have a guy on the inside, which is Airwave, which we see him right there in the front. Again, Airwave is that he seems like he does want to be involved. We don't know why, what's going on, and how that's the deal, but we'll have to deal. And then it says next, Inferno revealed. I'm like, all right. I thought they kind of were.
Who could it be?
Yeah,
I don't really care.
We'll see. And that's the problem. I don't think it's it's a very ambiguous villain. I think it's just to set up a big
They were defeated by trees,
threat.
Jim.
Yeah, and it's a big global threat to end up where let's see all of the characters. And I hope it does kind of calm down with that. I hope you end up getting more of a, team that you can kind of get behind and know who's going to go, at least for arcs or whatever.
Yeah.
It just the idea of every story, if it's like this, it kind of became a bit of a mess. And again, Batman's at the end, he's yelling, but we really don't know with Martian Manhunter, like even what happened with that. So we'll have to see, but we'll see how it goes. But it was okay. It didn't really impress me. It wasn't something that I had to like, oh my God, you have to read this. But there's some big things. The art at points looks really, really good. Again, even the parts where I said were confusing, I don't think it's Dan Morris' fault. I think the idea of having 800 characters in the middle of a raging forest fire is tough to actually make some distinct things and see what's going on. But what would you give it?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 6.5. I think it's decent. I mean, I could go with 6, but to me, Dan Moore's art, like, where he doesn't have too much cluttered in there, it is really, really good. The colors are fantastic. It's just, yes, like you said, we got 1 million characters here, and the only ones that mattered were, like, Batman, Martian Manhunter, Tefe, Levi, and kinda, sorta Aquaman, kinda. So it's just like, it keeps saying, oh, it's big, and it's just like, well, you have 100 Justice League members at the Amazon rainforest, and only 3 mattered. So, how great is the Justice League then?
And that's the thing. It's big, but then when you really think about it, it gets smaller and smaller. And it just ends up being, I mean, Tefe at the end says, lose my number, almost like she was a prop, that you needed that. And that, like having this whole play, Levi go down, to get Tefe in there as a cool little Easter egg type thing, but
I'd rather have Poison Ivy.
Yeah, never explained it. I would have liked both of them. I would have liked a little bit more of that, but yeah, I'm a 6.5 as well. I could even go. I could probably go 6, but I'll go 6.5 because of
I'll
the
be generous.
art.
I'll do 6.5.
Yeah. So with that, though, we will move on to the next book, and I guess I don't know. After reading that, maybe I'll be a little more positive of the next one. It is Green Lantern number 20. It is written by Jeremy Adams, art by Jack Herbert, colors of Romello Fajardo Jr., letters Dave Sharp, edit Paul Kaminsky, assistant editor Julian Grant. And when we go into this, it's very straightforward. It's one of those issues. Well, what Hal's doing isn't exactly fun, but when you get to Connor, Kyle, and Odyssey, that's there for just fun, pure out fun. Now, the problem I have, the Hal stuff really is only there in my mind to show you what happens when these people end up hitting this fractured spectrum. What happens without willpower. They kill a lot of people and then possibly blow up. At least this guy does. And you could go with rage, oh my God, he went ballistic and blew up. But this might be something that will happen to all those. It gives you a reason to, instead of just having to stop this guy, you want to almost save him, at least to take him. Now, he's a murderer through and through. He's consumed by this rage, whatnot. But this will maybe serve when we have somebody who doesn't murder everybody. If it is like, even like Nate Dogg, he's the Sarlin. Will he end up where he gets, will he blow up? We'll have to see. Again, blowing up as a rage thing seems like it might just be that, but it does give you an idea that these people need some help as well.
Yes.
At least the ones that aren't murderous, crazy. But again, this guy, if you want one bad day, holy moly, this guy has a problem. But then when you get to the Kyle stuff, Kyle, Connor, and Odyssey. It's fun.
Yeah.
It is a Indiana Jones wink, wink. You got Temple of Doom stuff in there. You have all that going on. The problem I have is, and I'm telling you, if Eric was here this week, he would flip his lid because this is an important thing at DC. The source wall has been it's been taken. It's gone. Perpetua, all that. It comes back, but we never really see it. So when you get to that, it's not really that much of a time for jokes. But if you do that, at least explain some things, and nothing is explained. Nothing is explained of how it came back, what's going on, is it different, whatnot, even to the point where it looks like you could just like jump over it.
I saw somebody talk about that. Yeah, they're like, well, you can just fly over this?
And then you're going to have a little bit where you're going to have to make it work. I can make it work. I still think it's really like you need a little more import to it. You need a little more explanation where if you touch a source wall, you become part of the source wall. So they go into this thing that they say is artificial. But to me, if you put something artificial on the source wall, it becomes the source wall as well.
Right.
Like it's very odd. But they're kind of claiming and how you kind of make it work. And again, it would be somebody who's trying to hide source energy in the source wall, who has now not only built a giant statue type thing that resembles what the others, there's, big gods and things in that are embedded in there and big. And then inside that has to still be artificial. It has to be a temple inside it to go. Now, the problem I have, and they have all traps. This makes sense, but explain a little more of how you found out.
Right. Well, how do you just know this thing exists? Like, I mean, this is supposed to be like they went to the trouble of hiding it at the source wall, and it's just like they know nobody would be dumb enough to venture out here, but apparently, just it's common knowledge. I guess I don't know. They don't
I don't
explain.
know. Well, that's the weird play. Is again, it's an artificial part of it, so that should be something that you don't just kind of happen by and say, "Oh, don't you get it? It's not. It's man-made. It's whatever." That's weird. That this should be what they are looking for. They're looking for something in the source wall where they can kind of get the source, and as they go, they discover, oh my God, look there, that's artificial, and that's the first step. And then they go, but like we said, why do they're going there for a reason, but then the reason comes very easy to find.
Yeah.
And then once we go in, it almost is like the kind of idea that I could tell you the craziest story. Oh my God, this is it. And you're like, oh my God, that's great. When do we see that? Oh, you don't, because it doesn't matter. Because you spell out traps and tricks and things to not have the matter. I mean, not have the matter at
Odyssey
all.
just throws one of those like mapping 3D things where it's like, oh, here's all the traps and thing. And Connor's just like, is there kryptonite? No. He just trips every single one of them.
And then go, show off.
It's
so
like,
it's played for jokes and laughs, and it feels like it should be more than jokes and laughs. But in the issue, it feels like you don't have enough time. You only have half the issue because Hal. But even what Hal's doing is just, we're seeing this Erasmus, this blacksmith, how bad he's had it. I see it. I mean, you don't really need to go that much detail. This guy has raged out, and with the fractured spectrum, he is getting this, manifesting this crazy power. But we get it. Each separate time is, okay, he's real mad. Ooh, now he's real mad. Hal gets there and wants to bring him down, and eventually is trying to stop him, and ends up the guy blows up. So at the end of this, there's just weird things that just don't add up. It adds up to stuff. You get the source, and then at the end we'll talk about the cliffhanger. But in the meantime, it seems like, again, a lot of like pomp and circumstance, a lot of much ado about nothing, because at the end you're really just saying, hey, there is a downside to this fractured spectrum more than we saw. We got to react. We got to work on this real quick. And also, hey, source energy that gets snatched from him at the end, which is kind of funny, but still. But you do start out with old Erastus, who he's making a sword. He's there. Hey, boss Tan, here's the sword. That'll be. Oh, you think I'm going to pay you?
You owe me taxes, idiot.
I'll say those. Don't. So then he's all like, woe is me. I'm sure, all that costs money. So he goes back. Yeah. So he goes back to his fate mate or whatever, his wife,
fate
really.
Partner, yeah.
Goes and says, hey, baby, I had problems. I don't need your time.
I don't care. I'm going out to the club.
Baby. I'm going to go get laid and paid. And she goes out and says, I don't need you. Maybe I'll find another fate partner. And slams the door. I'm like, all right. The rage is coming. At this point, I'm like, all right, there's two people that kind of do need to have some problems here. Then he's like, later he's walking downtown, he gets mugged. Then when he gets mugged, he stands up, sees his fate partner there with this dude. They're making fun of him. I'm like, yeah, this guy's having worse than one bad day. This is awful. And he rages out and he kills everybody in the village. We already know that the whole village gets killed. And that's where we pick up where Hal has been fighting him when he showed up. It's a cool way to go. Hal makes some crazy construct of a sumo wrestler.
I like the constructs.
I actually like the construct of like the Roman centurion armor. That was really cool. But in the meantime, Hal is going around and sees, this guy, we need to stop this guy. He killed everybody. This guy is a straight up murderer. We have to kill him. But I think, you want to take him into custody. Plus, maybe the idea should be also, you want to see how all this happened and what. But Hal ends up saying, Sinestro had the deal and everybody, but we have willpower. Not everybody's going to have the willpower to fight this off. Sinestro ends up being like a Red Lantern, but he's able to control it and do what he wants with it because of the willpower as a Green Lantern, and just him, and a Yellow Lantern. This guy didn't have it, and he is just raged out. Now, there's no coming back from what he did anyway. I'm thinking the idea like he's in big trouble and he really killed everybody.
Green Lantern,
like this idea of this guy becoming a Green Lantern after slaughtering his whole village. I don't see that.
Yeah, he wasn't the greatest Green Lantern ever at one point.
Yeah, at this point, if this guy Erastus becomes a Green Lantern, I may stop reading the book. I'm not even joking. Like, really? You're gonna make this guy a Green? But they're fighting. Hal is like, bashing him around. They're going back and forth, but then he ends up just going ballistic. Looks like he has like an aneurysm and blows up. Now, we don't know everything about this. Me and Eric even talked about the idea. Is this considered a Red Lantern? First off, there's no real ring. You end up obviously, and there's not even a lantern for it. They all got blown up. And there's no symbol, nothing comes, but this guy is Red Rage. I just think it's rage. I think that when you're playing this fractured spectrum,
right before he explodes, he has a bunch of blood coming out of his mouth. Now, I don't know if that's just like something, because like you said, that he hasn't been dipped in the pools
he's not in the blood pool or anything. And so, if you're a Red Lantern, you wouldn't even have blood. So you end up with your heart's taken out. And then if you stop being a Red Lantern, you die. You don't have a heart unless you're Supergirl who flew into the sun and regenerated her heart when she was a Red Lantern. But again, you have this guy in rage, and I think this is something that needs to be spelled out a little more, too, of the idea of a rage, not even a lantern. He's a rage spectrum type deal. And they said with the fractured spectrum, you could have all these emotions, like any emotion you have. Like I have an emotion of like pity. I may be a pity, I keep wanting to say lantern, but even so, like you're going to end up and they're very unstable and they'll end up like this guy blowing up. So you have the deal on Hal's able to save himself at the last second, but we'll have to see how that goes. And we're going to have the Red Lantern show up in the book. So we'll see how that is. I don't know how that works either with them
I don't
without
know.
a lantern and stuff like that. And again, I think some of the particulars might be kind of look the other way. Let's tell a story and not worry about all of the rules, but there's some big rules with the Red Lanterns, right? The guy ends up dying, and then you get his hammer. I like that Hal's just like, screw that hammer, and just flies away. He just flies away. He doesn't even grab it or anything. And again, that's that. The whole play is I stopped this guy. He stopped himself by getting so raged out he blew up, and he flies off. In the meantime, you go back to the three. I like Odyssey. I don't mind her. I know that Gold Beetle would have been a better choice because it's also a time travel deal that is a Jeremy Adams thing. But I like Odyssey. I like how she's doing. I even like the in between. I think that maybe what you have, even though Gold Beetle, even time travel. So what is her age? Like what would really be? But she's kind of a little younger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that with Odyssey, you can have that whole three deal of like, hey, I like her. No, I like her. And it seems like Connor is definitely
he's definitely
down.
And
he's trying to show off. So I like that. And then Kyle gets involved. But even then, when they start talking, and at one point at the beginning, they weren't going to go and do this. I mean, this is huge. Going to the source wall. Now, Kyle's very capable as a Green Lantern. He's really cool. But they even say, shouldn't we wait for Hal? And they're like, what? You chicken? And then that's all it takes it. And it ends up, oh, man, what are you? It's like Back to the Future. And he's like, nobody calls me chicken. And they go. And you've got, good way to go, Odyssey. Because at one point she's like, I thought that people here in this time had balls. It's basically what she says. And they go and do it. It's funny. I think the three of them are funny and have that little bit of a, that play of a little comedy relief, but you should play this a little more serious for what you're doing. And it just becomes Raiders of the Lost Ark. It becomes all the Indiana Jones movies there. You even get like a Temple of Doom because Connor says, hey, any kryptonite in these traps? No. Okay, back. There it is. I set them all off. Nothing happened. Now let's go get it. And then the big play is if we grab the source, everybody had to have been waiting for the giant boulder.
That's what I was waiting for. I was waiting for that.
Now it would have been funny. It seems like a giant, it's a little pebble. It ends up fun. But you end up where Connor then says, hey, I'm going to grab it. Super speed, I'm going to grab you guys then, and you make a construct to get us out of there. And there's no snafu at all about it. I mean, that's what they do. They do it 100% where they make it. I don't know why there's all that rail track there, and especially through space, because that looks like regular deal. But you end up as this thing is falling apart. And then the play is it blows up after they go out. They grab the source energy, it blows up. And then Odyssey, who I want her to be more developed. I want to see more of her. She just says, oh, there was so much to steal in there. I'm like, go back in time. 10 minutes, go steal it if you want. But that's kind of her thing, it seems, that she'll keep talking about. And they'll probably have a heist coming up, all that. This is kind of that anyway. But when they get out, they're like, oh, my God, everything's falling apart. And then you get Starbreaker and Sorrel or Nate, where they're like, oh, thanks. You saved us some time and energy. And they're going to grab Now, again, they're saying, you've saved us so much work. You still have Kyle, Connor, and Odyssey's in a bubble because they are in space, but they might be able to get it. I doubt they will get away because you want them, you want the story to progress and have tension or whatever, but I don't know. Connor can fend for himself, and Kyle has the deal, so we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it plays
what's Nate
out
going to do?
Yeah. Nate's going to cry in the background, flood you with his tears, and maybe his mascara. That's running. Starbreaker's pretty big, but again,
I'm not crying.
Connor.
This is the tears of the green. How dare you?
Yeah, exactly. And Connor, I think Connor could hold his own against these two, but we'll see. And it says next issue, Starbreaker and Sorrow versus Superboy and Kyle. Hal may even be coming back at this point because of what happened and he's off. So maybe they will stop him. I doubt it because you want to set that next stage up of, oh my God, we got to stop them from making a lantern. So it's kind of that weird play. I know that a lot of times people like Jeremy Adams because he has some fun. He did it in the Flash deal. You had those stories with space wrestling, and you ended up having the stuff with Turn the Thing Around, which drives me nuts, and the daddy-daughter stuff. It's fine. While I was reading it, I didn't love it. I'm starting to appreciate that a little more, thinking back at it, that maybe, but again, I think that's where I get here. Maybe later I'll say, oh man, that was kind of cool. They did a Raiders of the Lost Ark, one of my favorite things. But in the here and now, it seems more important to really let us know what's happening with the source file and take it a little more seriously. But in the end, it's a comic, and I had some fun with it, so I can let it pass. I just hope that this is just, hey, we had to set some things up. Let's get on to bigger and better things, and we'll see how that goes. But what would you give it?
Yeah, I'm going to go 7 out of 10. I did enjoy it, and it's a fun comic. It's just, you're right. There's some big things that they're doing here, and it's not exactly well explained, and it is kind of a little hand wavy with some things. But overall, I still enjoy it. I do like, even though it's a little generic with the Indiana Jones stuff, it's still fun.
Yeah,
and, and I get the whole thing with Hal versus Erasmus, where it's like, oh, we need to remind you why this is serious, why it's serious that the Spectrum is manifesting in different people throughout the galaxy. It is a serious threat. So I do like that. But like you said, it feels like one of those issues Jeremy Adams likes to do where it's like, oh, let's just have fun this issue and put a few important things in it. Just sprinkle.
I was just going to say, I think that with the idea of, hey there, that's my fate partner, let's go get laid. But I think he's like, ooh, that's dark. Like so we need to lighten it up. But you didn't need to joke too much in the thing. And legit, if this was an annual and they were just say that some ancient artifact of the Green Lantern Corps, like, oh my God, we want to find this orb of Zach. And the three of them go to get it, not in the source wall, just somewhere. Maybe they're off. this would be great. Like it would,
Yeah.
as an annual type thing
Yes.
or whatever, it would be great and really expand. And really, if you're going to do this, we know Kyle, we know Connor. I do want to know more of Odyssey. I want to know more of what she can do. I like her sassy attitude, so I'd like more of that. But when you do it, don't just spell out, oh, there's all these traps, and Connor's like, any kryptonite? No, okay, I'm back. Here it is. Like that you're playing this weird game of making it seem like it's something, but then you almost say, look, it really isn't anything. And that kind of threw me a bit, but it's still fun.
Yeah,
It's still
I think
some fun.
he could have used this to show how cool Odyssey is. I mean, because it's like if you had her taking the lead on them going through the temple and like actually like just devoted this issue to Kyle and co going through the temple trying to get to the sorcerer, I think it would have been a lot better, honestly.
Yeah,
But-
I think so too. I think that maybe we have the deal and you could have just had Erastus just blow up and then go and because and maybe even play the idea that in this temple Connor kind of fails somewhat, and then
you could have
Kyle
him do like
somewhat.
half the traps and then get to one where he gets stuck in, and then they have to come bail him out. At least then you know that there are stakes to it. It's not just I'm going to walk through it.
And then Kyle bailing him out, he gets stuck, and then there's only Odyssey left. And she's like, oh my God,
Right,
because
yeah,
again,
exactly.
she's a time traveler type deal. And they're, oh, you know what? And she's like, I can't do anything. But then she proves to herself something like that. But maybe as we go, we'll progress a little more with the book. But I really would have liked an annual. But I'm looking right now at the page with Hal. And that Centurion deal, it looks badass.
It is. I like the art.
Really
Jack Herbert
cool.
does a really good job.
I think he does a really, really good job on this. And I'll admit, I'd rather have this than Orgrim stuff any day. So I'm in with that, and that's going to be a real chore when we get to that down the line without Eric trying to convince me that it's good. But in that, it's fun enough. I'll give it a 7.5. You gave it a 7?
You know what?
I'm going to go
7.5.
7.5. I'll go 7.5 just because, whatever. It's just for fun. And
Yeah, I mean, it's still
great.
you still have fun. It's just it's not it's like we're dealing with some big things here. So I would like it to where it's like you can have the fun stuff be with like Connor and Kyle and stuff, but if you're dealing with the source wall, take it a little bit more seriously because it's like yeah.
I agree. It's big things. It's big things overall. And you kind of just almost, when you do it this way, you almost kind of show your hand that you don't realize it's a big thing, as big as it should be. But a lot of people reading this won't even, go with the idea, like they won't care. The idea of Perpetua and that stuff, a lot of people won't do.
Oh, look, he's referencing Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm happy.
Yeah,
It's
a lot of people will like that on the deal, and Jeremy Adams is good at doing that. So I'll give it that benefit. But that is it for me and you talking these books. Thank you for joining me, Zach.
No problem.
And as we go forward, you'll be joining me more and more, I am sure. And just so everybody knows, me and Zach also do a couple things on our Patreon. We do a year one podcast on the Patreon. You hear when we do the Batman and Robin year one on the regular podcast. And then we also do an indie podcast where, as we speak, me and you are going to go off and talk about the new TMNT. And that is actually exclusive on the Patreon as well. And it's patreon.com/weirdscience, all that stuff again. But thanks, Zach.
No
and
problem.
we're going to go off, and I think I'll be just ending the podcast now. So we will get to that right about now. All right. And that is it for the show. As I said, it was going to be cobbled together. We did not get to Green Arrow or the classic Si Spurrier Flash. I haven't even read Flash yet as I'm recording this. I did read Green Arrow, and it wasn't great. It ended up kind of meandering a bit. I almost was going to just review that myself. I hate actually talking about comics on my own. I will give a shout out to Double Aaron. I still do think about, at one point, he did tell me that I'm the only one that could do a solo podcast that he would listen to, but that's still not enough for me to like to do it. I ended up where I like to talk to other people, but I figured with this week and whatnot, Green Arrow kind of being kind of a down, I mean, not even down, it's the same thing, whatever, but I just didn't have it in me to just talk about that by myself. But as we go forward, I'll get more and more people. We'll fill in all the books. And as I said at the beginning, maybe even add a couple books down the line and see how that goes. But with all that, that is it. That is it for the show. I'll let you know what we're going to be talking about next week. 2 of these books will be picked by the badasses of the Get Fresh crew to be on our Patreon spotlight. If you would like to get involved in the Patreon and help us out for everything we do and give a ton of other shows with the people who you'll hear on the show here. Go to patreon.com/weird science. I really do appreciate it. It means a lot to me. And that's, keep going on, keeping on. And so there you go. I don't even know what I'm saying now. It's tough because I'm used to somebody else, Eric, jumping in, and then I can kind of set my thoughts again, but ain't no setting thoughts anymore. Here we go is what we're going to talk about. Would be Batgirl number 5. I hope that book kind of gets going. I hope something happens in this book. I ended up being, as we record, I'm recording on Saturday. I was on the Comic Aficionado show this morning on YouTube, and somebody had a super chat and talked about how nobody likes Cassandra Cain and this book and whatever. I love Cassandra Cain. I want this book to be good, but Tate Bromwell is just kind of not getting there yet. But hopefully it picks up. We ended up having at least the train crash. That's the weirdest thing of obviously saying it might pick up because of train crash, but at least I get off that train because that's all we had. I'll give you this list. It's in this. It's Batgirl number 5, written by Tate Bromwell, art by Takeshi Miyazawa. And it says, Cass comes face to face with her own past. As Batgirl continues to unravel the complicated relationship with her mother, she finds herself alone in the dark den of her enemies, plunged into poppy-induced hallucinations. I mean, what is that, college? I mean, seriously. Ooh-wee. Batgirl relives her past alongside a surprise visit from a Bat family member. Well, if they're doing poppy, it has to be Jason Todd, right? Yes. Who helps Cass confront the tangled roots of her origins? The lines between love, shame, and legacy begin to blur. Blurred lines. Wasn't that the song that Alan Thicke's kid got sued for? I think so. Will Cass survive long enough to embrace her heritage or break free from it at last? Well, if she breaks free from it at last, obviously saying at last, you might actually progress the character. It's one of the things that we've been talking about a bit on the podcast, but also in the Slack. When you join up on the Patreon, we have a Slack chat for that. And a lot of people have been talking about the idea of characters not progressing. Me and Eric talked about it. We had that with the Zatanna book. I say with Jason Todd a lot. Even a Damian had problems with that. But there's a lot of characters that get caught in that loop. Maybe Harley. And speaking of books that I might add, I did read Harley this week. I haven't read it since the new creative team. Boy, that book sucks. That book is terrible. There's my stamp of non-approval because that book was bad. Here's the next one, though, for next week. Birds of Prey, number 19, Kelly Thompson and Juan Cabal on art. The League of Assassins presses the attack. Black Canary, Sin, and Megara tried to bond through violence as they find themselves overwhelmed by a splinter League of Assassins. There's always there's 80 different versions of the League of Assassins, League of Shadows, League of people who eat peanut butter and jelly. I don't know. They're bent on reacquiring Sin. Maybe leaving Barda at home wasn't the best idea. Yeah, maybe not. Elsewhere, Barda, Cass, and Constantine face the unexpected that's the thing. They didn't really leave her at home. They're helping that Constantine in that weird side story where he's possessed by a demon to try to capture him. I'm not a big fan of this book. Face the unexpected as they return mischievous demon home while trapped inside the mysterious area known only as the Seam. It's the mysterious area known as the Seam. It's exciting stuff. I'm not really digging that book. Hopefully it'll get better, but at issue 19, is that likely? I don't know. The next book, which actually has a review already, somebody broke the embargo. And then that upsets me. And it is aped. It is a Max Majernik, who might or may not have been the quarterback for the Packers in the 80s. Oh, no, that was the Magic Man. JSA number 5. People don't know what I'm saying. JSA number 5 is written by Jeff Lemire with art by Diego Orlategla. The JSA cornered by Cobra. The JSA have a lead on a Cobra facility preparing for their next terrorist attack. But which faction of the team will make it to the facility first? And what will it mean for the future of the world's first super team? I don't know. We'll have to see. Who likes Cobra with a K? That's the coolest part of it, with a K. I'm not a big Cobra fan, but we'll see. I think that book is picking up. I think it does need to get out of this first arc and then maybe settle down a bit and give us some, big character work and stuff like that. But I'm enjoying it. I do like Jeff Lemire, so I am all for it. In the meantime, we'll continue. And the other deal is a crazy book. We know it. We love it. It's an Eric book, but it is Justice League, The Atom Project #3, a book that I am not enjoying at all. Here it's from John Ridley, Ryan Parrott, and art by Mike Perkins. Will the Atom Project tear itself apart? Hopefully. On the run and out of allies, Captain Atom is forced to take a desperate step that went his own past in search of assistance. At the same time, Ray and Ryan's latest experiment puts them at odds and could lead to disastrous consequences for all those on board the Watchtower. That Watchtower is just waiting to just blow up every second. But isn't the question on the case, Sheriff Intel? As the metahuman arms race with the terrorist group known as Inferno escalates, dissent in the ranks of the Justice League's Atom Project must be quelled before catastrophe overtakes the planet. So that ties into the Justice League Unlimited book as well with Inferno. So there you go. There you go. That Watchtower. I'm telling you, I wouldn't be on there. They don't have Butterbrickle ice cream, right? It just really just drives me insane. And also, like, it's got the Cyborg Superman. He's ripping it apart. Now you got it almost blown up. Seriously, I'm out. I'm out of that deal. But the next book that we'll be talking about, Poison Ivy #31. Let's see, Janet from HR, la Hero. It is G. Willow Wilson. Brian Level on art. That book changes artists a bit. As the shadow over Marshville, the strange and startling secrets of Marshville are revealed as Poison Ivy, Janet, and Peter Undine explore the transient and hungry ghost town's past. But some things are best left dead and forgotten. I agree. Lest you try to eat you, or they try to eat you alive. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really that into Marshville. I really think it's something that seems more goofy than important, but we'll see. I gotta give things more of an open mind, I guess, because I always end up where if I don't like it or whatnot, I know Eric will. So we had that back and forth. But seriously, I don't really care about Marshville, but hopefully this will make me care. We will move to the next book, which is a new #1. I would think that this will be on the Patreon spotlight. It is Secret 6 #1, written by Nicole Maines, art by Steven Scovia. Who will control the secrets of the DC universe? In the wake of absolute power, the Justice League has returned the war criminal Amanda Waller in prison, and things are finally getting back to normal. That is until Dreamer, John Kent, and Jay Nakamura discover that Waller has somehow vanished in the thin air from a cell. Now, I think that somebody else would probably figure that out, like people guarding her, but maybe not. With seemingly no leads and nothing but questions, and enough trauma to fill a swimming pool, it says, our three heroes are forced to team up with the bad guys, Deadshot, Catman, and Black Alice, to track down Waller, reclaim the infinite trove of secrets in her head, and uncover what the deal is with all these freaking chess pieces they keep seeing around. Oh no, it's checkmate shit. All without letting their own individual secrets tear them apart from inside. Ooh-wee. It does say from acclaimed writer. I don't know that it's a very acclaimed writing, though. I don't mind her writing as much as some people. Superstar artist Steven Segovia as well. Secret 6 are back in all new, high-stakes, twist-filled limited series. Not many people are excited about this book. I want to see what gives. I want to see if they talk about Deadshot and if he is fully alive, whatever is going on with him. Also, if you did see maybe on the YouTubes or the internets a deal about Dreamer and a surgery and everybody was losing their mind, it's not really that much of a thing. It's not mentioned. If you didn't know about it, if you don't know about it, when I'm saying this, you won't even know that it's a thing. It's not played out the way that some people were portraying it. And I think it's much ado about nothing. But again, a lot of people have their issues or whatnot. But if that's the one thing, I know that people are going to be mad about Jay Nakamura and John and things like that and whatnot. But if your thing is, I'm not going to read it because of this thing I heard about Dreamer, maybe check it out. Because it's really, like I said, it's much ado about nothing in that. But going forward, and I do think that'll be on our Patreon spotlight, going forward, we have a book that we know and love and is the ending of it, it seems. It is Shazam #21, written by Josie Campbell, who now I keep getting messed up with Sophie Campbell, who was on the TMNT and now coming over to do Supergirl, and I probably will never get that not mixed up. Art by Dan McDade. The Wizard and the Family Shazam. Mr. Mime has wormed his way across the entire world. You get that? And it will take more than a single champion of Shazam to stop him. And finally, will the Shazamily become an official family? Oh, we'll see. We shall see. Seems like the last issue, so we'll see indeed. I believe that's the deal. But yeah, we'll get that one out of there. Kind of glad to get done that book. That book was never good. Never good at all. It's a slog to get through. It means nothing, but we'll finish it out. And then we have one last book that suddenly this issue becomes the penultimate issue. And really one of the biggest reasons that I am upset that Eric did leave the show is I can't gloat at him that this Two-Face is now just a mini-series, right? The gloating would have been immense, but it is Two-Face number 4, written by Christian Ward, art by Fabio Averis, the trial of Harvey Dent. Pushed to the brink, Harvey Dent's mask of sanity is slipping, leading him to the deepest recesses of his own twisted mind as memories collide with haunting traumas from his past. This is the trial of Harvey's life, and Two-Face must face the ultimate judgment. Will he let go and rise above his shattered past, or will his darker half take over his body once and for all? And if you had been listening, Eric was kind of getting the idea there were three faces. I was going to say 3 Two-Faces. That feels weird to say, but I guess that's it. But yeah, I don't think so. I think it's just the 2. I think it's the idea of, oh no, the bad Two-Face, or Two-Face going against Harvey. And Eric had said at the beginning, like, this is a thing that was on the animated series. Instead of it ends up being that he was really going to be upset until he wasn't. But there you go. That's one of his things. And thinking of it, the deal, maybe he just left because I didn't agree with him on almost anything. But I think that's been from the beginning. We did go through a spell where we did start agreeing a lot. Lately, we haven't. But mainly what I get upset at is the idea of books seemingly meaning nothing, but making it seem like they're so important, but then they're not, and artificially produced. And why I say that is the idea of at the very end, 2 seconds left in the game that is Absolute Power. They go, oh, by the way, powers switch to new powers. Oh, my God. And then we have 6 books pop up because of just that. And it just doesn't work for me. And these books, you can see they're paper thin. They have little or nothing to give. And then they just kind of pretty much twiddle their thumbs until they get done. It's just to end up having another book on the books, for the bean counters, I think. But overall, if I was going to guess what we'll have on the Patreon spotlight, I do believe it would be Secret 6, number 1. And then I would probably say the Atom Project, Justice League, the Atom Project, number 3. We'll see. A lot of these books, next week is a weird week. There's a lot of smaller books. And a lot of these, say, Poison Ivy's been on the spotlight a lot. Shazam, maybe not, but Secret 6, obviously, Two-Face, all these, maybe just all of them. I don't know. That'd be pretty low, I think. But again, that is it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I really do appreciate it. Always have, always will. On going forward, if you do end up, say you've never talked to me, and you're like, you know what? I like the cut of that guy's jib, and I might want to get involved somehow because there's always more room for something. If you do want to reach out, you can just email me at weirdsciencedccomics@gmail.com. I believe that's it. We haven't said that in a while. And yeah, if you're interested, let me know. Let me know what you're enjoying. Maybe you have ideas. And also, if you do have ideas, say you're like, I don't want to be involved. Well, who would want to talk to that guy? Because obviously everybody leaves me. The idea, if you have an idea of, man, you should do this, or this would be cool, because we've had some ideas. One of the ideas was because some of the newer stuff wasn't great, maybe having a retro book of the week, maybe having a character of the month where we dive into that with one issue each week, something along those lines, maybe something. And I did have a show on the Patreon at one point that was a show that was like the rest of the story, I think I called it. It was something that if you have something during the week and it dives into the continuity behind, or a story, maybe do something like that, bring that up and review something. I don't know. I'm rambling on right now because I like to talk to everybody. But with all of that, if you have any questions, if you end up wanting to just shout out whatever, you can email me. The email will be in the show notes as well. So there you go. Kind of a sad week, kind of a weird week, a week where I kind of had to cobble some things together. I hope, and I'd like to say promise, but I'll say I hope I hope that I can pull things together a little more. It'll get tighter as we go. And as I said, this happened before. And when I remember back at the deal, it took a couple weeks to kind of get things chugging in a way that I thought was good. But some people have, I said, already reached out and said when that happened before, they really enjoyed it. So I hope that that continues. I hope that people will continue liking the show and maybe liking things a little, change up. A little change up there can't hurt, I guess. But that is it. I say all this. I don't have a sign off because that has been the same sign off forever. And I also don't have a song because the song that I really like at the end mentions Eric. We could still put it, I guess. Can we? I don't know. We're just going to get out of here. I'm going to tell everybody, thanks, everybody. And I will talk to you all later.